Hello, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. So I'm here with John, Wade Boggs fan. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Hi, Carlos. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. We definitely didn't have a long, lengthy conversation in which we maybe talked about certain people. Definitely
Yes.
didn't happen.
Nope.
I don't want these rumors to go out there. I want them squashed right this moment.
Any tapes have been fully destroyed, burned, whitewashed, you name it.
Absolutely. And as well, people know on this channel, as a man of peace, I would never even consider saying anything about anyone or anything related to any matters that may be going on in the community at this time.
Yeah.
I just want to leave it at that. Throw it out there. I always got to get in a little Easter egg for the people so they know.
Yes.
Yes.
What
But
were they talking about? Yeah.
yes, what could it be? What could it be? What could it be? It's okay. Fortunately, I have an addiction to drama, and the only cure is ignoring certain channels that shouldn't be watched.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did want to chat with John. So we were trying to connect at the beginning of the year, a couple of weeks here to get it. But now I think the perfect time has settled in so that now I was able to reach out to him. I did want to chat with him on a couple of different things, get a chance to finally talk some vintage. Yes.
Yes.
Now is a beautiful opportunity. But we're also going to talk a little player collecting because obviously that is one of my favorite genres. And John, as Wade Boggs fan, might know a thing or two about player collecting.
A little bit.
Yeah. So I think we're staying in our lanes, but at the same time we'll get a chance to expand the lane a little bit, which I think
Yeah.
is a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing.
Yes.
So first, let me ask you a couple of the basic standard garden variety questions. What got you into doing the YouTube thing? And also, we did chat about it a little bit. What got you into doing a little bit of you got the nice microphone going on. You got the production values there a little bit. What prompted you to kind of think in that direction?
Sure. I guess maybe starting off with the whole Wade Boggs thing, or then get into the
So
production, or
I want to talk about the YouTube channel first, and then
okay,
we'll talk about the Wade Boggs thing specific of the player collecting portion.
sure. It was a little over 3 years ago, and I don't know why I just got on YouTube and just started typing in baseball cards or things like that. I didn't know like 3.5 years ago that there was this whole community out there that videos on baseball cards and collecting and sports cards in general. And it's just wow, look at all these people talking about their collections, interacting with other people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have I For the longest time I collected in a bubble where it was me. I had maybe a few people that I would reach out to, mainly on the Wade Boggs side, over the past 10, 15 years. But I didn't have any friends, family that cared a hoot about my baseball card collection.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in a bubble. And then suddenly there was this world out there where all these collectors from across the country were interacting with each other and doing these videos. I'm like, that sounds like a lot of fun. So I started off very basic. You're talking about the setup here. I already had the Boggs room set up, so that was
Mm-hmm.
this was my sort of area of solitude and sanctuary and all that stuff. But I'm like, okay, so if I'm going to do these videos, I sort of I know you could just do a camera. You can just set up your iPhone and boom and go. But I wanted to just do something a little bit more production value or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
just for me. And so initially started off with a webcam. I'm like, okay, and here's a webcam, and I got some cheap microphone or something, or maybe I was even using the microphone on the webcam, and the audio was terrible. I'm like, okay, well, let me invest in a little cheap microphone. Again, none of this stuff was expensive. I think I spent, you know, 50, $60 on this, on the
Mm-hmm.
webcam. I mean, I went cheap. Okay. So, this is, I'm not looking at, $600 of video equipment here. So I went with the webcam and the microphone, and then I'm like, okay, well, I want to talk, but then I want to show off cards. So then I was like pausing the video, moving the webcam, going over here, and then doing shots of the cards, and then I have to move things back. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I invested in a second webcam that I have on a boom. So now I can do sort of like my little intro, uh, talk about what cards I'm going to show off, and then I can switch to the second webcam, still have that visual so people can see me talking, whether they enjoy that or not, as well as I'm, while I'm showing off the cards.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just an easy setup. So now it's mainly like everything's almost automatic. I can just, with a click of a button, go from this view. I can do a screen capture on my laptop because I have a second monitor. Just various things, and it's really just a click of a button. Everything's sort of preset, and I can go back and forth to whatever view that I want. So it's really easy once I have the setup. And again, it didn't cost me. I think everything, even with lights, I $150 or something. It's not. I
Nice.
didn't go all out. So
Nice. I think though the point is that it doesn't have to be this really expensive thing. And
no.
again, to your point, m- anybody can make a YouTube video or YouTube channel with very minimal stuff. Like at this point, the
Eh,
Pocket Computer does an amazing job. I actually use this, to be honest, for the pickup videos. I literally will
Yeah.
set this up on the tripod and boom. And for
Yep.
those ones, we were chatting a little bit beforehand. I wanted to kind of bring this up to give also folks that might be interested in a little of the background of how to do a YouTube channel some ideas and thoughts. It can be, I've got the microphone here, and now I've got this boom arm here that I actually upgraded. But I had another one that was super cheap for the longest time, and it worked beautifully for the live streams and everything. I like the fact that this one is completely away from me, hands off, and I don't have to touch anything.
Yep.
But when I'm doing the pickup video, I literally put this on a microphone and boom, and I'm talking, and the audio is coming straight out of this. But for a
Yep.
video that's straightforward, it's easy.
You hit record, you hit end, you upload it to YouTube, and there you go.
Exactly.
And it gets, there's nothing wrong, especially those that want to. I think there's a lot of the collectors out there that watch content,
Mhm.
and they're maybe hesitant on getting started. Like, oh, I don't know what to do with this. Literally, get a $10 tripod for your phone, angle it, have a table, and just start talking and showing off cards. That's
Mhm.
all you need. You don't have to have, a lot of my videos, and I started off right away. I decided I wanted my face on my videos so people could get to know me, whatever. But many channels out there, I have no idea what they look like because they just show off the cards, and that's fine. If you're shy on being on camera, you think you're going to screw up or whatever, this again, set up the camera on your table on a tripod, show off your cards, record your audio, your voice, and upload the video. It's as simple as that. You don't have to do anything fancy.
Mhm.
We're not we're not I'm trying to think of the word here, snooty enough that we can't enjoy the content for the content, because generally speaking, I like looking at sports cards, mainly
Mhm.
baseball cards, but sports cards. I don't care that much if you have fancy graphics and all this stuff and sounds and all this stuff. Yeah, maybe it's slightly entertaining, but I'm there for the cards,
Mhm.
or in some cases, discussion. So you don't have to have this high production value to enjoy creating content on YouTube.
I think that's fair. And like I said, to your point, it can also become its own thing where you can start off with that. And if you enjoy it and have a passion for it, like I enjoy elements of it. I don't want to edit all my videos, but in some cases I'll incorporate a little bit of it. For me, it's more of a treat because I get to really kind of play around with concepts. Sometimes I'll have this idea in my head for a video I want to do, and I joke about it because it's become a bit of a trope of my channel where I'll do these long recorded videos. I'll do a lot of these concept videos in terms of having a long discussion, kind of a one-sided discussion, but then hopefully people get in on it in the comments side of things. But it got to the point where now I do like a screen capture, and in reality, that's the simplest thing in the world because I push a button, do the screen capture, and I'm recording the audio. But
Sure.
at the same time, though, it makes it practical because it allows me to get the video out. Because if I had to do a big elaborate editing thing to go along with it, then it just adds a bunch of extra time to it, and I'm already talking for 35, 40 minutes. And I'm like, I don't have enough hours in the day to do all this. That allows me to make videos and actually get them out. And I
Yeah.
think that's an intimidating thing for some folks where it's like, oh, but
Yeah.
I don't have enough time. And you might be right. And I understand it. But in that case, go to the idea that we talked about. So, get the
Yeah.
tripods. Because I said, for my pickup videos, I don't have the energy to go through a whole elaborate setup. This makes it really simple. And I use this too. And
Yeah.
then I also use this because it allows me to have the best of both worlds. And then I can do my live stream, do the rest of it. But then I can use this when it makes more sense for me to do this. Simplify your life. And if
Yeah.
this makes the most sense for the starting point, use this.
Yeah. Now I've made the conscious decision myself to do some editing and to think about thumbnails and stuff. Just it's just me. It's not necessarily for really for anyone else, but I personally want a certain value or quality to what I put on YouTube. That's just me. It's only just done for me.
Mhm.
So I put the time into it. So I'll do a 15-20 minute video, and through editing and uploading and this and creating a thumbnail, I may put an hour and a half, 2 hours into that one video. That's my choice. You can simply, again, you do a 15-minute video and it'll literally take you 20 minutes to record, to upload it to YouTube, to put a title onto it, and there you go. So you could, and in some cases, the quality is the same. I mean, really, I do this little editing stuff, but you could get the same quality video by just on your phone.
Yeah.
So,
And then you can also evolve from there because you're not bound to being that way forever. And I'll give you guys a YouTube channel recommendation because we were joking about a different kind of YouTube channel recommendation thing, but we'll leave it out of this discussion. We could maybe if I invite John to come on the live stream, maybe then we'll have that discussion because that is a little more open ended. But I'll recommend it to you. It's a channel called Zeeree. And I'll actually link it in the description for you. Now, most people have never heard of it. Why? Because he is a breaker who breaks open hockey cards predominantly. But here's the thing. Here's the reason why I use him as an example. For the most part, he does not show his face. He's literally a disembodied voice that is opening these things. Now, he has developed a persona. He's got a little bit of a unique editing style and everything. Okay, but I want you to understand what I just described to you. I described to you a YouTube channel of a breaker that opens hockey cards. So I'm niching this way down, right? I'm niching this way down. Who doesn't show himself and who has like a weird and quirky editing style. Okay. We talk about channels. He's got 54,000 subscribers. Almost 55,000.
oh,
He
wow.
dwarfs us all.
Wow.
We are mere peasants in the presence of Zeeree, of the juggernaut that is Zeeree. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
What does that tell you? And you would think that being strictly hockey cards would like niche him down to the point he'd be You thought I was going to say 500 subscribers. No.
Yeah.
54,700 subscribers.
Wow.
Stand in awe, peasants.
Yeah.
Stand in awe.
Yeah.
But that's the point. There is something for everybody, and people might be shocked how many people. Before I said this name, I'm curious. With a virtual showing of hands, and you can put it in the comments section or wherever else you want. I'm just curious. How many of you even heard of this channel?
Nope. I hadn't.
Yeah, there's a good chance a number of people have not. But that tells you how weird, and just quick aside to a point, like I said, that I was joking about with John at the very beginning of this discussion. People don't understand that there is no card community. There are communities. There are many of them, and many of them are ignorant of each other. Now, there are some folks who can kind of operate. I was able to provide that reference to you because I'm familiar with Zeeree. I've been familiar with him for some time. He's a weird dude in terms of that. I've never met the guy. I've never talked to the guy. I just enjoy the odd video of his because it is weird. It's a little quirky. It's a little different. However, nearly 55,000 people subscribe to it. So somebody likes it.
Yeah.
It gets way more views than I do on anything.
It's almost like galaxies in the universe. Okay. The galaxy, you may say, hey, here's this card community. Well, but there's a galaxy over there and a galaxy over there. And I haven't even seen or heard of that galaxy. And there's that whole group of people over there. And it's just, it just goes to show how large of a hobby, let's just put it that way, rather than talk about community.
Yeah.
Hobby is out there. Now, maybe not everyone is online or watching videos or creating content, but there are, I'm sure, millions of collectors, hobbyists, not getting into specific focus areas, that's for a whole nother discussion, but individuals out there who are within the greater hobby. And to say a community is made up of 5 million people, that's a large community. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And like I said, just to put a button on this, just to put into context, this individual that I mentioned here, Zeeree, has made 4 videos in the last week. 4 videos. Nearly 9,000 views for a video from 7 hours ago. 15,000 views, 16,000 views, and 15,000 views. We are but mere peasants in the presence of Zeeree.
Yeah.
Like I said. But like I said, I'm not saying that to say anything other than you never know what's going to work.
Yeah.
You just don't. And you never know. Like those are pretty consistent numbers. It's not like a sudden jumping up. And I told you 3 of those videos from 3 days ago, 15,000, 5 days ago, 16,000, 7 days ago, 15,000. The one before that, 23,000, 20,000, 20,000, 23,000. I'm just reading the first page. It's consistent all the time. 10, 15, 20,000 views constantly. That is a loyal audience.
Yeah.
That strikes me as a consistently loyal audience who enjoys what he's doing. Yeah. You may have never heard of the guy. That doesn't matter. Other people have, and they enjoy it. And there's going to be channels that you're going to watch that you might enjoy that other people will not. And that's perfectly fine. But that's how weird this little niche is. It's a bizarre little segment. That's why I say, like, sometimes we get tunnel vision. We're only paying attention to what's going on. Like, why would anybody watch that? Because somebody likes it. That's the answer to that question. Somebody likes it.
Yeah.
In fact, in this
Yeah.
case, a lot of people do.
Oh yeah, we were talking about it earlier again, before this about viral videos and what makes a video go viral. And like sometimes like there's no rhyme or reason. Like I won't get into details, but I saw this one video on this one channel that it doesn't have a huge number of subscribers, and their normal videos are maybe 100, 200 views. They have one video that like is close to 7,500 views. And when you look at that video compared to their other videos, it's in a similar line. It's not like he deviated from a different subject.
Mhm.
It was talking about one small thing, and that one just explodes. You just don't know.
Yeah, that's why I say don't try to chase it. There's no
Yeah.
point in trying to chase it because you're not going to know exactly what's going to work. And a lot of times that leads to frustration. But that's kind of the content creation piece. I wanted to have a little discussion on that at the beginning because, like I said, it's one of my favorite little subtopics inside of this niche.
Mhm.
It's fun to evaluate this niche and look at it constantly because people consistently forget how small it is.
Oh,
It's like it's
yeah.
so tiny in the grand scheme of this YouTube universe. If you want to take,
Oh my God. Oh, I know. When you think how many millions and hundreds of millions of video views a day, and some of our channels, I get thrilled when one of my videos gets 200 views, and there's so many channels out there that get thousands and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of views per video, and you're like, okay, we're just a small little sliver in the YouTube universe.
Yep. Well, whenever you think about it, just put it in this perspective for anybody thinking out there. If somebody is consistently doing 15, 20,000 views, they're getting the equivalent of an arena
Yeah.
to watch every video. You just
Wow.
picture an arena full of people watching this one thing.
Wow.
Just putting it out there, just
Yeah.
thinking about it. Anyway, all right. So I want to chat a little bit about the player collecting thing because that is one of my favorite topics. I know a thing or two about it myself, but and this is maybe where I want to start. I'm going to talk about how you got into the weight box thing, but let me let you weigh in on a simple concept here. Well, not a simple concept, but one that is a fun one that is standard in this genre. There is the super collector. I love the super collector thing. This is one of the great legacies of Beckett. Now, I'll use quickly the analogy for mine. So my big player PC is Mike Modano. I've been collecting Mike Modano since 1995. So at this point now we're in 2023. That is 28 years. His career started in 1990, and I started collecting him about 4 or 5 years in. And I collected the entirety of his career. He had a 20-year career, so I collected through the majority of his career. And then we're well past that point now. So now we're in the post-playing days, and they still produce cards all the time, whatever.
Oh yeah.
The checklist, now to give contrast, I would consider, if we're going to use this definition, and the definition is murky to me, because this is one of those ones that's really tough.
Yes.
I would be comfortable calling myself a super collector of Mike Modano because over the course of these years, I almost have 2,500 cards of about a 5,800 card checklist. So I've got a good chunk of the cards that are out there. And I could have more, honestly, if I was willing to just throw money at the problem, or if I was as concerned of the post-playing days. The playing days stuff is more interesting to me. I will say out of the first decade or so of his playing days, I have about 85, 90% of his cards. Like the checklist has shrunk down to like, I've got almost everything. In fact, the first 5 years of his career, I need a dozen cards. And I was excited that the other day I literally came across one. And it was a whopping $3. But the point is, it's one of the 12. That's the part that matters. It's one of the 12. That's all that matters.
Yes, I know that feeling all too well.
Yes. So that to me, is the more super collector thing. Now I've got other player PCs that they're smaller by comparison. I've done a few over time, and I'll share some more of them down the road in the channel in the future. I actually have a nice little Joe Carter collection that I put together the side from years ago, but I have to revisit it and go check it out. I added a card to it a little while ago, but it's been a while since I've touched it. I've got a little bit of a Carlos Delgado collection as well, which I have shown on the channel a little bit. But really, Modano's the real player collection, the main one. Some Jamie Benn as well. But for Jamie Benn, I would not consider myself to be a super collector because I was extremely picky. I have a nice little Brett Favre collection of some very nice Brett Favre cards. However, that is a player collection. But I would not consider myself a super collector by any way, shape, or form because I have maybe about 20 or 30 cards. 20 or 30 nice cards, predominantly.
Right.
But he's got 10,000 cards. Like, it's a very large checklist. They're nice. That's what, to me, it feels like there has to be a little bit of a breadth of a collection to really qualify for it. Your thoughts?
I think you probably nailed it when you said, I consider myself a Mike Modano super collector because X. and that's all that's needed. Because honestly, there is no. This has been brought up in various discussions. I actually did a video maybe about a year ago on, what is a super collector, and there's no real definition
There isn't.
because you can't say, okay, well, you're a super collector if you have at least 500 different cards of that player.
Mhm.
Well, what if they're only 1,000 cards produced of that player and you have 500? Okay, you have 50% of the ones out there. Well, what if you have 500 different cards of Ken Griffey Jr., who
Mhm.
probably has 35 or 40,000 cards in their master checklist, and you have 500? Does that make you a super collector of Ken Griffey Jr.? Probably not.
Mhm.
So then if it's percentage of the cards out there, well, what percentage? Again, Ken Griffey Jr., if you say, well, to be a super collector, you have to have 25% of their checklist in your collection. Well, again, that could be 12,000 cards or something like. I mean, then maybe two people in the entire could be considered super collectors. So you can't go by percentage of available cards. You can't necessarily go by number of different cards as all right, you reach this one level, now you're an official super collector. So one thing that you pointed out is longevity plus a good number of cards in your collection. Again, you can say, okay, you're at nearly 50%. To me, that's very impressive. You could probably say the same thing as, hey, I've been collecting Mike Madonna for 26 years, and I have 750 different cards out of a checklist of 5,000.
Mhm.
Still, that's a decent percentage, and the fact that you've put the time and effort and focus on that player, or it could be a team. I mean, you could be a super collector of a team as well, but mainly it's a player.
Mhm.
That you put the time and effort and concentration into that one player and constantly look to add to that collection. To me, you could have a valid argument saying, I am a super collector of X player.
Mhm.
For me, my Wade Boggs collection started around 96, 97,
Mhm.
around there. So I'm going on maybe 25 years or so. Um, in terms of numbers in my checklist, he's got about maybe 10,000 roughly uh, cards in my what I call my master checklist, which I try
Mhm.
to keep updated as often as possible. And I'm working my way to 5,500 different. I just crossed 5,400. So around that 55% ish range. Just again, mainly because if you just look behind me, it's gone beyond cards. So that's
Mhm.
another factor I get. Again, do you just stick with cards? And that's fine. But does your obsession even go beyond cards? And when you combine the two and say, yeah, I've been collecting this player for this long, and I have this many cards, and I have some jerseys and an autographed puck or ball or this and some posters or whatever. Now you're getting into, hey, this is pretty serious. And I think
That's
that's
so what you're playing into though
yeah.
is that little caveat I gave about breadth. So that's why I gave a couple of other examples. I consider myself to be a Mike Modano super collector, but because I've been doing it for this long, because I've got a variety of different items in that collection, there's quite a breadth to it. To your point, I have autographed jerseys, I have autographed pucks. There's an autographed photo right here.
Yep.
So it's like, so I've got a bunch of, there's figurines and stuff right there. So like there is different things that comprise this collection beyond, and it could be just the cards, but just the variety is enough. That's why I
Mhm.
compared it to the Favre collection. I wanted to say it like my usual way, but
Yep.
I'll shorten it up for y'all. But the proper pronunciation requires a couple more seconds of enunciation.
Yes.
But the point is that I've got some very nice Favre cards, very nice ones that I've enjoyed, and I'm being very picky. I'm being extremely selective.
Hmm.
I've got a collection of Juan Soto cards. I got some stuff sitting in the Z Folio, and I've got some other nice cards and some nice pieces, some limited cards and limited pieces. I'm not a super collector.
Yep.
I don't want everything. And by the way, you don't have to want everything, but I don't even want a lot of it. I actually
Yep.
want a very select, controlled PC for these players that I'm referencing.
Yep.
Whereas Medano, the view is very wide. I'm willing to go a lot wider on it comparatively. I am interested in some of those other items. I was interested in the bobbleheads and some of those other things. I was willing to expand it beyond just the base. Um,
Yeah.
and that to me adds that extra element. That's the breadth part.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you can be a super collector in one area and have multiple PCs of players you like. You may have, it may be for other players more quality than quantity.
Mhm.
Hey, I want their rookie card. I want a couple autograph cards, some memorabilia cards, some maybe a couple of those serial numbers. Hey, I want to get a one of one. I just want to have one of one. Yes, again, quality stuff, small on quantity, and to me that would be a PC. Hey, I enjoy this player. I'll occasionally pick one
Mhm.
up, but I'm not constantly checking eBay. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
If you're on a daily basis like I am, checking what Boggs cards have been, newly listed
Yeah.
and seeing, hey, do I have this one? Do I not have that one? Oh, I don't have that one. Oh, but they asked for too much for it. I mean, if you're constantly looking for that player, then I think you're in that obsession level of super collector. If you say, hey, it's been a while since I bought a Brett Favre card. I saw this one pop up on here, there, whatever. I think that's a cool card. I want to maybe add that to my collection. That's more of a PC, in
Mhm.
my opinion.
I think so. The way we're putting it is that obviously it is a fluid definition. There is no the definition, and
Yep.
we're not solving that today.
No.
But I think maybe if I take what you're saying and kind of distilling it a little bit, is maybe it's kind of a frame of mind of the approach that you take to it. That's why
Yes.
I made the distinction. I have multiple PCs for these different players,
Hmm.
and several of them might have some quantity. Like the Carlos Delgado thing, I probably have about 400 different cards. The Joe Carter, I probably have about 300 different cards. So it's not like I don't have anything.
Yep.
I've got actually quite a bit. With the Jamie Benn collection, I'll use that. I'm giving different examples just to give different contrasts
Hmm.
to this. The Jamie Benn collection probably has about 200 cards. However, and this is an interesting quirk that I did with that one on purpose because I thought it would make it interesting. I focused quite a bit on his rookie year, and his rookie year checklist is 101 cards.
Wow.
It's a pretty tight checklist, but it's a rookie year, especially compared to today. But back in the
Yeah.
day, that's a pretty wide checklist.
Yeah.
But 101 cards, and I have 68 of those. So I actually have a pretty high percentage that includes rookies, parallels, patch parallels, autograph parallels, and some of that stuff is tough to come by. Some of that stuff's really limited,
Hmm.
but I have a good chunk of that checklist. I don't consider that to be a super collection, but it's certainly one of my PCs that I've put some time and some care and some curation into.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
so curation, I think, is a part of it, but combined with these other elements. I think the breadth thing, I think, matters. I
Yeah.
think you can spend a lot of money on a collection and put together an amazing collection of very select pieces. I just don't consider that to be a super collection. Like if you're a Patrick Mahomes guy and you go spend $500,000 on 3 cards, I think you have a phenomenal PC.
Yeah.
I just don't think I consider that a super collection from
No.
my perspective. Just the
Right.
way I would take it.
Right.
So it's not
Right.
about dollar amount. It's not about
Nope.
quality because in this case you'd have both. Quality certainly, and you'd
Hmm.
certainly spend good money on it. But I consider that a quality great PC, very impressive. That's kind of what I'd shoot for. My long term goal would be to have my Juan Soto list actually shrink. I probably
Yep.
would move some of the cards to move into some nicer cards, and I want to
Hmm.
have a more showcase kind of PC for that.
Yeah.
Whereas Medana was like, all right, 2,500 cards, let's go for 3,000.
Yeah.
We may as
But
well.
it if you notice, the discussion around being a super collector or not is you don't hear, hey, I'm a Mickey Mantle super collector or I'm a Babu super collector because the number of cards is so limited, the checklist, unless you go beyond playing days. Okay.
Yeah.
But for Madonna and Boggs and stuff, there's their current players, or I'll throw out your favorite player, Mike Trout.
Never heard of the guy. No idea
Never
who
heard
that
of the
is.
guy. Yeah, play there. There's so many cards out there of in modern players, and I think was it Dustin and Blake have a Facebook group. I think it's them that has the Super Collectors page.
Okay.
And if you look at it, they're more modern players, players that have played within the last, at the most 30, 40 years, maybe going back to the Boggs era.
Mhm.
Okay. That's where you usually find the self-described or qualified for super collectors.
Mhm.
You don't. It's you don't see too many. Oh, I'm a Stan Musial super collector. Well, what does that mean? Okay, well, I have all those playing day cards, and I have some postcards, and I have some this and some post serials, whatever. And yeah, I have a 40 card collection because there's really in playing days, there's only 70 cards during his playing days that were made. I mean, it, you don't have that discussion when you get into vintage, which is another, again,
Mhm.
general topic we're going to be getting into. So it's interesting though at the types of cards that people collect and say they're super collectors of.
Do you think it's the fact that the only reason this word came into parlance was because of Beckett and the showcases that they would
Oh
have in
yeah,
the magazine, and you would see because whenever you saw it, and one of the fun friend of the channel, Amish Dave Archer, was once upon a time a Josh Johnson super collector. He was in one of those features.
I was
Um,
in the magazine too.
oh, were you in the magazine
I
for the
was.
collection? So
Yeah.
what issue?
Ichiro was on the cover, so it was the geez, what year was that? I'm trying to remember now. 2013, ah, 12, 13. I don't know. Ichiro was on the covers. It was the second, third year that they did the Super Collector or whatever. And just for shits and giggles, I'm like, what? Sure, I'll email. I think it was Chris Olds at the time. He was
Yeah.
working at Beckett, and just sent in a submission and gave some numbers and some pictures. And sure enough, like, you're selected. I'm like, really?
Mhm.
And I think you're right that that whole Beckett, they may have coined the super collector. Hey, these are people that have built an amazing collection of a certain player.
Mhm.
And that's really what the definition was. It's an impressive collection.
Yeah.
And then it's gone on from there to
Well, the thing is,
mean
an
maybe
impressive
various
collection is
different things.
nebulous, isn't it?
Oh
It
yeah.
really is a nebulous
Compared to
concept. It's
who or
like,
what?
yeah,
And
it's like, what's impressive to you?
yeah,
That was always the reason why I wanted to start with that conversation is because it's one of the most famous like debates. Because I remember in the forum days, that was one of the most infamous debates. What is a super collector? And it was always bizarre. It's like, what do you consider? And look, the important thing is, and maybe this would be a good qualifier for it. If you're having a hobby discussion, recording it, and then you had eBay and the other monitor, and you just purchased a card, then you're a super collector.
yes. Oh, hold on. I got to put my bid in.
Yeah, it's like I'm just saying we might have to add that to the qualification. That might have to be a thing you have to do.
Yes.
I'm not saying I did that
Yeah.
allegedly, but
Yeah.
it might have happened. The important thing is, it is nebulous. It doesn't. There is no real meaning to it, and it's more than anything, it's interesting discussion. It's always interesting to see. For me, it's like I'm just curious where your head's at as far as that piece is concerned, because I think there's a lot of different takes on it and a lot of different variances, and I think whatever makes you happy is fine. Look, you want to call yourself a super collector? I'll let you have it. Have at
Exactly.
it.
Like you said, when you start off, I think I'm a super collector of X because why? Sure. Go,
Yeah.
go ahead. Yeah, you're still no skin off my back if you want to call yourself a super collector of X or whatever. Now, if you claim to be a weight bog super collector and have 100 cards, I may have some issue with saying, oh, okay, well, you're not really a, yeah.
You might have to pull rank on that one. You might
But
have to pull
there
rank.
aren't too many that you know. Well, no, actually, there are a good number of people that collect weight box cards. So
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. Like, whenever I look at it, I have certain reference points I'll pull. Like I said, in relative terms to my players' checklist, I have a pretty strong percentage of it. When we do those other, like, I have 260 certified autographs out of his checklist, which is pretty strong on that. In terms of memorabilia cards, a pretty strong amount of those. I like to keep track of that stuff. It's more entertaining for me. And I'll
mhm.
give credit where it's due. I started writing it down because I used to keep it like a loose, nebulous, numerical calculation of it. I'm not deep enough to sit there and do a whole spreadsheet on it. But
I do.
the reason, yeah, no, for sure, we'll talk about that in a second. But the reason I started writing it down is actually, and I'll give him credit, was Topps 85401.
Neat.
Because he
Yep.
started doing the little thing in the little notepad, and I actually
Yes.
have a notepad that I keep for that. I keep it to the three columns, so I actually keep it nearby. So I
There
actually
you
keep
go.
it to the three columns. But that is actually something I borrowed from him, and it lets me kind of, so whenever I do the videos and I do my pickups, I add to the count. As whatever the case is, I add to the count, quickly jot it down, helps me keep track of it. That way I don't have to remember, and I don't have to consistently rerun the numbers. I have it in front of me.
Yeah.
But so credit to him on that. But at the same time, I would consider his bonds collection certainly, obviously, in that super
Oh
collector
yeah.
category, because he's shooting for 6,000 now bond
Yes.
cards. So that's lots when you're thinking about those kinds of numbers. Now, talking about the Wade Boggs one, So let's lean into this piece of it. Now that we've had the debate that we must have. It's a
Yes.
requirement for player collector
Yes.
discussions. All right, Wade Boggs. First question. Why Wade Boggs?
Why rate box? It. I used to collect. I used to buy packs when I was first early on in collecting. Then I would collect sets, and starting in the early '90s, the mid '90s, all the card companies started coming out with so many different sets.
Mhm.
It wasn't just tops. It was now tops, this and this and this. Then you got Score, and you got Fleer, and you got Donruss, and Upper Deck, and then all these products. I can't, collect every set that came out every year. So I
Mhm.
was in a quandary of, okay, what direction do I want to go in my collection? What would I have interest in doing in collecting? It wasn't going to be sets anymore. I didn't want to just open random packs and say, okay, I just got a bunch of cards without any focus. So I knew about player collectors, whether it be through magazines or on the internet at the time. Again, we're talking about 95, 96, 97 timeframe. And I said, okay, there are these player collectors out there that try to collect as many different cards as they can of a player. I'm like, that sounds fun. So I'm like, okay, now who? So at the time, I had all my cards sorted by player. So I started going through my collection. I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
well, whose cards do I have a decent number of? So I was just this player. I'm yeah, okay. And then I got to Wade Boggs, and I found out, geez, I already had like maybe 1 or 200 cards just through, again, opening packs and stuff, not necessarily focused on buying specific, hey, a Wade Boggs card. But I just happened to have a decent basis to start off with. So that was one. Then two, I always grew up rooting for the Red Sox. My mom
Mhm.
was born and raised in Massachusetts. We'd go up there and visit. I had been to Fenway Park a few times. When I'd go up there to visit my grandparents, they always had the Red Sox on TV. And he was a great Red Sox player, even though, again, at the time, he had moved on from Boston and was wrapping up his Yankees career before going on to Tampa Bay.
Mhm.
And so it was later on in his career, but I'm like, man, he was always a great Red Sox. And I always appreciated a baseball player who could hit for high average and walk. Now I'm one of those unique ones that a lot of people, chicks dig the home run type thing, right? I never was fascinated by home run hitters because in my mind, and again, I know this is simplistic, but you just need to be big and have the right uppercut swing or whatever, and you can hit home runs. Anyone can hit home runs. Now, to certain levels, okay, maybe there's a difference between a 20 home run player and someone who can hit 40 or 50 every year. Okay.
I was going to say, I
But
will not have you besmirch the name of Richie Sexton.
no, okay. Yeah.
I got much entertainment out of him back in the day. It
Yeah.
was wonderful. Adam
So,
Dunn is
yeah.
right now staring daggers through you if he was watching this video.
Okay. So it always impressed me. And again, yeah, Boggs, oh, he's only a singles and doubles hitter and da da da. But his job, he wasn't leadoff batter, but he was typically a number two. Sometimes I think he may have dropped into the number three slot in the lineup, but primarily number two. His job was to get on base. His job wasn't
Mhm.
to drive in runs. His job wasn't to hit home runs. His job was to get on base, move the runners on, and hopefully be in a position to score a run based on maybe the 3 or 4 or 5 hitter in the lineup behind him who had more power. And he was excellent at doing that. And so I said, okay, in Wade Boggs, I already have a decent number of his cards already. He was a great Red Sox, one of the greatest Red Sox players, in my opinion, after Ted Williams, Kari Yastrzemski. Maybe you can throw Fisk in there.
Mhm.
Um, and then Wade Boggs. And hit for high average, 3,000 hits, seven consecutive years of 200 or more hits.
Yep.
Again, in today's age, you don't see a player like that. You don't. You're lucky if a player now in their career is lucky to have 2 batting titles, and
Mhm.
maybe they're spread a couple years apart.
Yes.
To have, I think it was 4 batting titles in a row, and then a skip a year, and then another batting title, 5 batting titles in 6 years.
Yeah.
7 years of 200 plus hits. Uh, I think it was 4 years of 200 hits and 100 walks consecutive. No one else has done that.
Well, I think
No one.
what you've got there,
It's
it's funny
yeah,
enough, is because the Boggs, so 83, that rookie class, you had him and Gwynn.
and
And
Sandberg.
basically they like wreck the whole thing. It's like a bunch
Yeah,
of batting
yeah,
titles, hits, and all that. The only guy who's come down the pipeline who did that was Ichiro. That was
yeah.
basically it, because he was a guy who was 200 hits a year, boom, 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 like
And
clockwork, 200
he
hits.
broke Boggs's record.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because he was a machine too. Like
he was a
his thing
machine
was
too.
like, and to your point, he was a guy who focused on getting on base. That was literally he's going to hit. Now, in fairness, he didn't take as many walks because his on base was not quite the same thing.
Yeah.
But he was a slap. He would take advantage of his speed, and he would take
Yes.
advantage of his ability. His swing would basically become a bunt. Like he would find a way to
It
get on
was a
base.
swinging bunt. Yeah, exactly. And he'd be halfway to first base before the ball
And
was
he was a
made.
master. He had
Yeah,
mastered that. He had it down to a science. That's how he gets to. That's how he breaks the hits record. That's how he does it, because you have to be able to do that. And
yeah,
but it gives a bit of a different perspective. But he's the only guy in the current era who even does anything like that, because
yeah,
everybody else has to. Guys don't really hit high average anymore anyway. Even the batting title guys.
yeah, yeah. And what sort of solidified things for me is the first time I went out to the National was 20, I think it was 2015. And it was the first time I met Wade Boggs. And the nicest guy, because again, I've heard stories of other retired players, Hall of Famers that, oh, I love this guy, I love this player, I love watching him play, and you meet him in person, and whether maybe you catch him on the wrong day or whatever, but they're maybe not so kind, or some of them as far as being a jerk. Now maybe it's on your fault that you just walk up to him in the middle of a a room and say, hey, so and so, can I have your autograph or whatever, which is a bit you know not polite. But
Mm.
so for various reasons, every time that I have had an interaction with Wade, now again, he knows me as being one of his biggest fans, and again, so he does appreciate me, speaking great things about him and stuff. But he is generally, I've never heard anyone say anything bad about an interaction with Wade Boggs. He enjoys and appreciates his fans. So not only can I appreciate him as a player and what he did on the field, and enjoy collecting his cards and memorabilia, but I think I'm up to 8 times I've met him now, and in a couple weeks he's going to be in New Jersey in early February, and I'm going to make it number 9.
Hmm.
So wait, if you're watching this, I'm going to be seeing you in early February.
And you're on the Christmas card list.
And I'm on the Christmas card list. That was just an amazing surprise. I
Mm.
just wow. Yeah. So he is a great guy, which just makes all of this worth it to
Mhm.
me.
No, I think that's fair, and I think that's a very valid reason. The reason why I wanted to get the background on it is because everybody's got their own rationale for it. I'm not going to go rehash the whole thing, but for me, it was just an appreciation of the player. It was an appreciation at the time where I started following. It was observing, because Medano at the time was very much the subject of a lot of the highlights, because his style was very flashy in the sense that he would do the end-to-end rushes, and he had the speed as a skater. One of his skills was that he could move with the puck at high speed and be able to go in, and he had all the skill in the world to be able to do a lot of things. So it was all world skill, and it's one of those things where, and then my timing was perfect because I started collecting him in the mid '90s. Well, that team immediately became good right around that time, because they started putting all the pieces together, became contenders, got to the Stanley Cup, won the Stanley Cup, got back to the Stanley Cup, had a shot at it against great teams, and then stayed a contender basically perennially for about a decade. They were consistently in the mix in a very, very tough side of the bracket, because that conference was full of teams full of Hall of Famers. Like
Yeah.
in retrospect, those teams were full of Hall of Famers all over the place, and they were bludgeoning each other in the playoffs. And it was myself and my buddies basically arguing our relative teams' merits. Where I'm like, when it's all said and done, that Stanley Cup team, I forget if it's 6 or 7. It's like six or seven, or maybe even 8 Hall of Famers on that team.
Wow.
Like it was a lot, and they were playing teams who were full of Hall of Famers, because at one point Detroit had 3 or 4 or 500 goal guys.
Okay. Yeah.
So like all Hall eventually go to the Hall of Fame.
Was that Iserman and some of the others, or
You had Shanahan, you had
okay?
Hall, and even Robitaille was there for a cup of coffee.
Oh, Luke Ribs. Okay. Again,
Yes.
I know some hockey players.
Yeah,
But
but
yeah.
you just have to think all these guys played on these teams. So it's like you've got all these guys who eventually would make it to the Hall of Fame, all of them. And then in Colorado, you had Joe Sakic Hall of Fame, Peter Forsberg Hall of Fame, Patrick Roy Hall of Fame. So it's like that's your competition. They were all in the same conference. So only one of them can win, and that's to get to the Stanley Cup final to play the other team. And most of the time they would bludgeon them, unless it was New Jersey, who would obviously pose legitimate competition. But to be fair, I stand by my statement. New Jersey had a much easier path. The Eastern Conference was weak, and that's the argument that I still use. I still remember my '90s arguments.
Yeah.
But anyway, but that was a fun time. That was an enjoyable time because that gives me a lot of fun memories because we would have those debates, and there were a lot of them. And it was a lot of arguing back and forth on it, and none of us really got the upper hand on it. That's what made it very frustrating. None of us could get, but everybody won something at one point or another. Especially if you were a fan of those teams. Eventually, all of them got one at least, so
Yeah.
it was pretty good.
Good.
But that's the origin story of a collector. And then from your perspective in that, there's a lot background in there. And obviously you've turned it into the box room. So when I'm looking at it, obviously there's a whole element to it. It talks to that breadth that we spoke of earlier. Obviously, tons of cards. But we've got the jerseys I can see. We've got the posters there I can see. Some of them I've seen our autographs. We've got the Bog standee. Like that's just from what I can see from this vantage point. There's a lot.
Yeah.
Now what's going on there with the little cabinet there with all the drawers? What's going on with that?
Yeah, that is the library card catalog. I had always wanted when I've seen them, show up on different things. Obviously, you remember them from the days of being in the library at school and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, boy, I bet you those drawers would be perfect to store cards. So a library where not too far from here where I grew up, they were moving to a much larger, nicer building, a former local mansion that the library bought, and were converting it into the new library. Well, they had an auction of some of the old stuff. They were buying, new stuff, and here's some old stuff to try to raise money to help offset the cost of moving and so on. And I'd heard that they had some library card catalogs. So I ended up getting a great deal on those. I think there's a total of maybe 90 drawers. And except for PSA, which PSA and SGC holders, they fit BVG holders. So I can have those graded cards. But other than PSA graded cards and SGC graded cards, they fit, top loaders, mag holders, cards perfectly along its side. You can put an index card in there to note the year. I have everything in order by year, but that's where I keep pretty much all my Wade Boggs cards.
Nice.
So the ones that you see have like a little white to them. They have a little tag of the year. So it starts over there at 81 and then finishes up here with, there we go. 2001, 2002 cards.
A lot of people underestimate, for the record, a lot of people underestimate the skill of doing the look at yourself in the video and do the point.
Oh my God. Yes.
I mastered it. I mastered it in the live stream. And sometimes they would be like, how do you, it takes work, buddy. You gotta figure it out. It takes a lot to follow.
Yeah. So that way I can, you talk about your checklist and stuff. I have a dual system. I have a main Excel spreadsheet with my master checklist and with an X that I have it or not. And then I have another software program I actually designed 15 years ago or something like that. And I still use it. It's a basic thing, rudimentary thing, but it also keeps track of my Wade Boggs and other cards in my collection. And so I have those dual things, but at any point in time, if someone says, hey, do you have a 1993 score Wade Boggs? I can go, okay, well, there's 93, boom, Flair top score. Okay, yep, here it is. And so I can easily find any Boggs card in my collection through that.
Nice. I like it.
And it looks cool. So it's,
well, I was going to say, like,
I have cardboard boxes, there's, I don't know if you can see it over here. There's boxes and boxes. I have the 5,000 count. I have the 2-row boxes, all that stuff. And that's what they used to be in. So they would stack upon stack. Well, if I wanted to find a card and it's that, I got to move all the boxes and all this stuff just to find that one card or to put a new card that I got in order. That's just so much easier.
No, for sure, and I like the investment in the time of it. I keep running into the issue where I joke with my buddies and everything. It's like I've got some Z folios that hold a certain amount of the cards. Now the good part is that for a lot of the years for Medano, the Z folio can hold the whole year. Now, obviously, memorabilia cards and stuff, I'm not going to put it in a Z folio. I'm going to separate it out. But the regular cards actually house very well in them. So if I want to grab 96, 97, boom, I can grab that right off. Boom, pop it open. And if it's a rainbow or something, I can actually have it on a page, and it actually presents very well and very nicely. So
Yes.
that's an advantage of that. So I've got it up until 2002, 2003. So 1990 to 2002, 2003. I want to work on some of the other years. For the most part, I'm just kind of lazy about it because I'll index everything correctly. I'll mark it off correctly. But at the same time, I'm like, I really hate sorting cards.
Yeah.
Like at this point, I've developed an absolute hatred of it. It's like, I might have to hire an assistant. I need people. That's what I need right now. Like, I don't even want to do it. I just want to make sure the cards are there. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, what you see behind me in maybe 2 months is going to start coming down
Mm-hmm.
because my wife and I were building a new house. And while I am eventually going to get an entire basement finished for my new man cave, which would give me about 4 times this space, that's not coming for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to be moving into a space about half this size. So I'll be setting up the card catalog. That's number one. There's room in there for that. But I
Mm-hmm.
got my desk and my setup and a few other things. And so I'll be able to put some stuff on the wall, have some boxes of other cards in my collection, but a lot of it's just going to be stored up in boxes for probably a few years until I can get that basement fixed. So I'm right now I'm really enjoying this space because I know that it's going to be going away. But at the end of the day, it will rise to be even more magnificent someday.
There you go. Are you gonna? You might have to take some high res images and just go green screen for a while. Just be like,
You know
just
what? I was thinking of that. I'm like, all right, I'll just hit record, move away, record the background screen. So you may see it if it starts to look really terrible, but if it's anywhere close, I'll be like, yeah, nothing's going on. Still got my box room. Nothing to see here.
yeah, it's just nothing ever moves. Just for months and months. Like it's like, yep, the box room is perfectly. I keep it exactly in this state.
Yeah,
You,
I
you,
was
you
actually
guys need
I
to organize it better.
I'm going to try it at least, see how it works. But if I start looking like Max Headroom, I don't know if you're old enough about that, but if you
Oh,
get the
I'm familiar
jagged
with that
thing,
reference. Yes, I'm
yes,
familiar with that reference.
love that show. But anyway, if I start looking like Max Headroom, yeah, I'm gonna drop it and say, "Yep, see that black wall? Here's why." But
Mm.
yeah,
No, I like it. It's just it's one of the first thoughts that comes to my mind. It's like, oh, at this point, you may as well just mess with people.
yeah,
Like, I like to change my background a little bit more, but it's one of those things. Like, how much effort is it going to take me to do this? I feel like I
yeah,
need some dedicated time to like work on it. Like this shelf needs to be reorganized. Like there's this nonsense going up over here. It's like I'll get to it eventually. And this is the lament of when you live in a place a long time. It's like, yeah, I'll get to it eventually. Carlos, you said that 2 years ago. I did.
yep, I
I
did.
did.
Yes,
Hmm.
I'm reminded of that by my wife on occasion for some things, and it wasn't until, I mean, this. Luckily, the setup here, you did not see what was immediately behind me on the floor. It was just a complete and utter mess. Boxes of various sizes everywhere and a small little path. Like I said, luckily I could hide it and you
Hmm.
didn't notice it. But now again, it's a little bit more organized and I cleared out rooms so it's a little bit more organized right before the move, of course.
I think
So
that's fair. Now, let me ask you this, kind of playing off of it. Obviously, as you mentioned, you met Boggs a bunch of different times. Now, you've also gotten a variety of different things signed.
yes.
Now, at a certain point, now this is a curiosity of mine. Obviously, meeting your favorite player, that's a great thing. I joke with everyone. I've met Medano before. I had a chance to meet him again, but I was like, it was in the morning. I've already done it, so it's like I'm good. I'm not as concerned about it.
Mhm.
But at the same time, like it was fun for what it was. But and I may do it again. But at a certain point, it's like I enjoy getting certain things autographed, but it's like I don't need everything in creation autograph. Although there are
Yes.
certain things that are interesting to me, so
Mhm.
I'm kind of curious about the rhyme or reason, the thought behind it, because I know you did something interesting with one of the last autographs. You had I guess was it like a wooden base or what was the specific thing?
Yes. Barnwood Sports. I think it's a Barnwood Sports. I think that's what it is. I may have the name not fully correct,
Yeah.
but they do these home plates,
Yes.
custom home plates out of wood, and you usually have like the team logo and maybe the player's number, this and that, various things that they do primarily for Hall of Famers. So I have two different versions, and the famous one is when I went to a New Jersey show. It's one of the first videos I think I put on my channel, but it was maybe around 4 or 5 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, and I warned him ahead of time because we follow each other on Twitter, and I've sent him direct messages through there, and so I warned him ahead of time. I said, "Wait, I'm coming to the New Jersey show. Be prepared to sign a lot." He goes, "Oh, okay."
Hmm.
And I had him in all the different slats. It was more of it's like a flag background with a big B, I think for Boston. I think that's the one. Anyway, on all the different slats, I had him put all his different career statistics and 12-time All-Star, 2-time Gold Glove. This is the 3,010 hits. You name it, anything I could think of, I had him sign. And just everyone, because I let people go in line. I'm like, no, you go ahead of me because I'm going to be holding you up.
Hmm.
And so people are like, what are you getting signed and all this stuff? And I had a crowd around me when he started signing this because I gave him a layout. I printed out a piece of paper. I'm like, okay, here I want you to write this, and here I want you to do that. He goes, yep, sure, yep, okay. And he's following along and doing and did everything. And everyone's like, dude, let me see that. So, my little logo on all my thumbnails is of someone say, hey, I want to take a picture.
Hmm.
And so we both stood up holding that plaque, that home plate, and that's what I use on all my thumbnails. But yeah, that's a unique piece.
Hmm.
I've had a bat signed, I've had jerseys signed, so I pretty
Hmm.
much have a home and away Red Sox, Yankees, and Double Rays jersey signed. So I've done that thing. Um, One of the things, so I'm like, I'm not necessarily running out of stuff to sign, but I realize, you know what? I don't have a personalized baseball. So I'm going to have him sign a baseball for me here in February when I go see him. But yeah,
It's hilarious
I'm,
that like the most
yeah,
common one is the one you did
yeah,
have. Like
yeah.
the
I mean, I have autographed balls.
right.
I have autograph. In fact, I have my oldest autograph is a 1979 Bristol Red Sox when he was in the minor leagues.
Okay.
Almost complete team signed ball with Wade Boggs as a rookie. So I do have autographed baseballs,
Sure.
but not one, hey, to John, blah, 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 and maybe some inscriptions or something like that. So,
Yeah.
that the personal touch, obviously it's not for resale. It's just for my personal collection because
Right.
who's going to want a ball signed to John? uh, but yeah, it's, I do a photo op every time
Hmm.
just to have a memory of that experience, and I usually have him sign that. So there's various things I have signed, but at some point, I'm probably going to reach a point of like, well, geez, what else can I have him sign? There's plenty of stuff in my collection that I could, his um, foul tips, his chicken cookbook.
Oh, okay.
That's something that I've seen signed copies of. I have a copy,
It's
but it's
literally
not
called
signed.
foul tips.
It's called
Oh,
foul
that
tips.
is a dad joke and a half right there.
Yeah. Yep. And so it's a cookbook of all multiple different chicken dishes.
Of course it is.
And so yeah, that's one thing maybe in the future that I could have him sign, or maybe some Sports Illustrated. There's always something in my collection that I could have him sign. So I don't think I'm ever going to turn down an opportunity to see him. And again, in order to sort of get in that position to just chat with him briefly, you got to have that autograph ticket and this and that. Which I could technically, if I wanted something signed, I could just send it down to Wade, and he'd probably sign it for me. Maybe give a little donation to his charity and stuff like
Hmm.
that. I could go down that route and save a lot of money, but I know some of that money goes to him, and so I'm willing to put in that investment to get 5-10 minutes chatting with him and stuff. So.
Good on you. I like it. I like it. No, I appreciate it. I think that's taking. That's why I said I think that's taking the player collecting to a different tier. That's why I thought it was interesting. It's like, yeah, technically you don't have to run out of things to have them sign, but at a certain point it's like, do you actually need every single object in the building sign
Right.
necessarily? Like at a certain point, I was like, is it even? So I took this piece of plasterboard out of the box room to
Right.
put it in the new box room, and it's also signed. It's,
Yes.
it's like, is
Yeah.
that necessary? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Although
Yeah.
maybe we'll have to connect after and it'll be like, so how much is it to get him an autograph baseball to say Carlos is right, Fish Boy sucks? Just saying. I
Yeah.
might be willing to invest in that. I feel
Yeah.
like that's a Wade Boggs autograph that I could
Yeah.
get into.
Yeah. But getting back to the definition of super collector, you will find that there is some sort of obsession and over the top craziness involved. Not
Yes.
not not in all cases, but I think those are ones where you can point to that. Oh yeah, he's really out there. That's got to be a super because he's just my friend Rich. You think this is impressive? He has in terms of memory probably 4 times. You talk about everything and anything having to do with Wade Boggs, newspaper clippings, anything with his face on it, anything with his name on it, he wants as part of his collection. And if he finds a second or third copy of it and likes it, he'll buy a second and third copy of it. His just memorabilia collection, and he has a whole ton of game use stuff. I have very little game use stuff. We call him the Boggs father, and so he's way up there in terms of craziness, and he admits it.
Nice.
Um, I'm at
Now here's a
that
question
next
though.
next level down of craziness.
Now I'm not talking about starting lineups, but does Wade Boggs have an action figure?
No, not beyond. He has bobbleheads, and that's an action figure.
That is a Mike Modano action figure. A Team USA Mike Modano action figure.
Boggs does not have that. At least now he has. Now, my friend Rich has a 3 foot tall bobblehead.
I believe this.
3 foot, 3 foot tall
I believe
bobblehead.
this. Look, I just had to ask. I was just curious. I figured you would know. I
Yep.
just figured, like, since I had it with arm's reach, and actually that needs to get dusted. But the point is that since I had it with arm's reach, I was like, but does he have an action figure?
Yeah, he does not. At
Might be
least
the
not
next
that I'm
logical
aware
step.
of.
Might be the next logical step, is all I'm saying. Might be the
Yep.
next logical step. Might have to get himself an action figure.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I was like, what the hell is this? It's like, yeah, I'll buy it. Sure. I was like, sure. Whatever you say.
Yes.
Now, question for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at that point. It was more like an obligation. It's like whatever you say. Sure, fine. I'll take this. It is licensed and everything. It's like the International Federation. It's like it's Team USA. It's the Team USA deal. So it's
Okay.
like cool, man. All right,
Yeah.
whatever. Great. Sounds good. Now you have the spreadsheet that you mentioned earlier. What do you base off of it? Is it based off like the Beckett checklist, or do you pull it from somewhere else, or where do you get it from?
I started it off of Beckett
Mhm.
back in 2004, 2005. I
Mhm.
just did sort of like a lot of cutting and paste, copy and paste from the website into an Excel spreadsheet, sort of formatted it. And then for the most part, since then, it's, oh, this is I see a card pop up on eBay of, oh, okay, he's included in 2022 Panini National Treasures. Okay, so I go online, type up 2022 Panini National Treasures checklist, do a search for Boggs. Okay, here are these 15 cards with all the different parallels. I add them to my checklist. A lot of it is, oh, here's what's really frustrating is the Topps Signature Archives Hall of Fame edition, where it's a box of one card
Okay.
and it's a buyback card usually.
Mhm.
Well, there's no checklist because a
Right.
lot of them are one of ones. They just, for any player, they just buy back random cards, have the player sign it, encapsulate it, and put it in the box. Well, with no checklist, I don't know which ones are out there. So it's basically if I see something show up on eBay or on Facebook or something like that, I take a picture, I make a note, and I make sure I add it to my collection, even though I may never own that card.
Right.
I make sure it's part of my collection. So it's really been a manual effort since probably around 2005
Yeah.
that I've created, and so it's gone from probably that checklist has probably doubled since then. I would imagine from 2005 till today, probably start off at 5,000 some cards, and like I said, it's up to 10,000 plus now.
Yeah. In baseball, it's worse than some of the other ones because I think I did the breakdown at one point. I think Medano has about 3,800, 3,900 playing days cards. It's a lot, especially considering the amount of hockey issues, and especially considering Upper Deck became exclusive at a certain
Yeah,
point. So they stopped making it for the other manufacturers, which changed that element of it after a while. But it's almost 5,800 cards now, or 5,800 and change. So that's 2,000 post playing days.
yeah,
So it's like, all right then. And one of the ones that likes to do a lot of them is our good friend at Leaf. I know you did a video on
yes,
Leaf. I think it was the jumping the shark.
yes,
I chuckled.
yeah,
I chuckled about that one because I infamously have one rainbow that I did where I still
yeah,
curse Brian Gray to this day,
yes,
because they stuck two one of ones in it, and one
yeah,
is in a regular like a gold one of one, but then they also did a green Spectrum Canadian exclusive box one of one, and I'm like, what the hell is that?
yeah,
And I was like, I was able to get my hands on them, but I joke with my buddies. I was like, I was so mad about the second one of one that when it came time, I had this rainbow of this autograph card for the subset. They have a silver Spectrum, out of two that I bought one. But then when the other one came up on eBay, I'm like, screw it, I'm taking that too.
yeah,
None of you can have it.
yes,
Now I'm mad. None of you can have it. It's like not even
yeah,
necessary. I don't even care. It's not. It's the principle of the thing. I want it now, and I have two
yeah,
of the four printing plates, so I have four of the six one of ones for that stupid. Plus the two, both of the two of two. So that's like another one of one. I might as well because I got them both.
yeah. I mean, I sort of complained, but at the same time, I'm a bit of a hypocrite because the other example I gave was 2019 Panini Prism.
Mm,
And I went over the 30 some different
there's a lot.
parallels.
There's a lot.
Other than I think there's only one of one. Other than the one of one, I am only missing two. So I can complain about, dang it, there's 30 parallels. Well, I went down the rabbit hole and I got 27 of the 30 some. And so it's like, I only have myself to blame.
Mm.
But when you start getting into animal patterns, I'm like, where is this going? You know, planetary parallels. Are we going to have a Mars parallel and a Jupiter parallel, a Neptune parallel? I mean, really, where is this thing going, and how far can it go? That was the premise of that video.
So Wade Boggs will be very proud. It's going to Uranus.
So
It was too easy.
I know.
So it was like
Yeah,
T it. Put it on a T for me. Come on.
there you go. There
Put it
you
on a T
go.
for me. Um, very mature programming we're
Yes.
running here. But no, it's like creativity has taken very much a drop because at this point it's just these slight variances, slight variations. Some of it is being far too subtle, or silly or whatever. Like I said, the reason I was mad about the two one of ones is not because you can have the right to do whatever you want, but it was in this Canadian exclusive box. So I'm like, so when is it getting pulled? I happened
Yeah.
across it in ComC. That's the only reason I saw it. Like I happened to be across it. I saw it, and then I had to make a deal. I was able to get the one really cheap, and then the other one I had to kind of argue with the guy a fair bit, and finally we were able to come to a deal. But it's like, it's so unnecessary.
Hmm.
So two kind of related questions. One of them is, do you successfully avoid duplicates? Do you occasionally grab them? Like in this case, I gave you the example where I did the two of two just out of spite. Like
Yeah.
it's good old fashioned spite. But for the most part, I don't try to get duplicates. I try to avoid it. If there's like a cool patch card or something that might be kind of neat, but usually I'll move off the other card. Usually that's what I'll do. I'll get one as an upgrade and then move off the other one. Do you have any duplicates at all, or do you avoid that?
I I try to avoid duplicates, and the main reason is, again, I like the fact that I'm working on building as many different cards
Mhm,
of his. All right, so that's one. Two, I have a limited hobby budget.
mhm,
So if I'm going to spend money, in my mind, just my mind, why would I spend money on a card I already have?
mhm. Yep.
So I'm like, if I'm going to spend money, I want something that I don't have. So that's why I tend to, now. That's not to say I don't have any duplicates, because one, with all these different parallels, there have been occasion where I buy the card and I think it's this one parallel, because what also pisses me off is when they do the different colored parallels and they use the same serial number, and the two parallels are a light green and a dark green. And depending on how well the photo in the eBay listing is, well, they're both serial numbered out of 175. Well, is that the dark green or is that the light green? I can't tell. And sometimes the seller doesn't even know. So I've bought cards where I look at it and compare and like, oh, dang it, I have that one. It's still not the one that I need. And there's one that I did. You mentioned having both copies of the serial numbered out of 2 card. Back in 2005, Upper Deck did a Upper Deck Hall of Fame, which had a ton of cards, parallels out there, was all that stuff. And I think it was either a triple or quad auto patch card out of 5. And I accidentally bought 2 of those. Did I sell one to get some money back to put to another box card? No. So I have 2 of the 5. But what's interesting is they're sticker autographs. And one of them is in black ink, and another one he used blue ink. So technically they're a little bit different, but they're the same parallel version. But I have a black ink version and a blue ink version.
Right.
And finally, though, to show, again, getting back to some super collectors being nuts and a little out there.
I think every super collector's nuts.
Probably my favorite in terms of design weight box card is this 1984 Topps.
Okay.
And I had maybe, I don't know, 40, 50 of them or something like that. And I'm like, and I keep seeing these listings on eBay of, lots of 30 or 40 card lot or whatever, all ungraded and excellent mint, near mint, all like that quality and stuff. So I'm like, well, that'd be cool to maybe have a block of 100 of his 84 Topps cards. So I bought a few lots. And I'm like, maybe I can go for 250, because I still saw these lots coming out. They're not rare cards, right? So I kept buying some more and buying some more. And I got to 250. And I said, well, if I'm at 250, let's just go for 500. I got to 500. I'm like, okay, now I'm a super collector here. I need to have one thing I can point to show that I am completely nuts. Let's go for 1,000. So I have like 1,020 I picked up here and there. Some of them have been sent to me as gifts and stuff like that. But I have like 1,020 1984 Topps weight box cards. Why? Because I felt like it. And I picked them up for like 20 cents each. So it wasn't a huge investment. They're not all mint. Probably only a few of them would be worthy even grading to try to get a high grade. That's not the point. But yeah, I set a goal, and I think I did it within 9 months.
You should have gone to get to 1983
or 84 for 1984.
Yeah, or 84.
Topps.
But just some theme, like a specific number that corresponds to. Like I can't knock it, because after a while I got bored and I started, because for me the rookie year stuff, I'm kind of the opposite of Victor, the rookie card specialist. I don't put a lot of extra stock in the rookie card. To me, the rookie card sometimes are some of the most boring cards that a player's checklist, to be honest. But with that said, I probably have about a dozen of the Medano O-Pee-Chee Premier. Like, that's his best rookie, so to speak. I probably have about a dozen or so, maybe a little over that. But after a while, I kind of got bored, and I had a PSA 10. And then at one point I was going to sell it, because at one point it was actually selling for pretty good money later, because during the boom, a lot of things went up. And I grabbed the 9, and I was going to sell it, and I ended up hanging on to it. So I still have the 9 and 10 somewhere. But then I grabbed the BGS 9.5 with the good subgrades. And then I grabbed a CSG 10. And I think the only thing I'm missing is probably an SGC. I'm like, oh, I'll just get the stupid SGC 10 at some point and just be like, all right, here you go.
And you got the rainbow of grades.
Yeah, like it doesn't even matter. Like, it's all the same. It's the same. It's the same damn card. And I've got like 10 of them that are ungraded. And the PSA 10 I had came out of my original collection, because I hand correlated certain ones. I was like, I just needed one that was well centered. I also have a KSA 10, which is the Canadian grader over here, which was one of my original ones from the original stash. The PSA 10 came from my original stash as well.
Yeah.
So I had some nicely centered copies. Like, as long as the centering is good on it, you're usually good. That particular year and brand is not difficult, But a lot of people will send in really crummy ones and wonder why they got. It's like, guys, just make sure the centering's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless you got something weird going on, like the print control on that was fine as long as the centering's okay. You're probably going to be fine. But yeah, so probably sooner or later I'll have the rainbow of the grade. It's like no reason, just
Yeah.
because whatever. We'll go for it. And I've got this set registry of his rookies because he was number 9, and all his rookies, there's 9 of them.
Oh.
I go, oh, numerology, we love it. We
Yep.
love that combination. Sounds good.
Yep.
But anyway, but yeah, it's weird. Like, it's your point. There's always some kind of weird quirk or something. There's always got to be something in there, some subset or theme that somebody will put together.
Yep.
Now, kind of playing in the same thing, like I said. So the duplicates is one thing. Now, one of the ones I was actually doing a double check to see in there. I saw that Boggs actually was in one of the Topps Tech sets. So thoughts on the Topps Tech?
Yeah. Again, getting
Topps
into
Tech is taking it to a different tier normally for a lot of years.
He was in. I think his first year was, I want to say, 99.
That's what I have in front of me. Yeah, 99.
And that was when it was the of the base cards. There were 30 cards and different background patterns of him in an away jersey uniform and a home uniform.
And you lucked out, by the way. I think it was 98 was the one that had the really ridiculous one. Because 98, I want to say, was 99 and 99. So 99 version, 99 patterns, and then the diffractors. So one parallel of each. So actually 198 individual cards per player.
Yeah. Well, this one in 99 had just the 60 cards. So 30 home, 30 away.
Yes.
Then they had a gold version out of 10 of all 60.
Yep.
Now I have all the 60 base. I have about maybe 13 of the different gold cards out of 10. They're somewhat hard.
So making them out of 10 right now, that's ridiculous. That's like, to me, the way I would phrase it, and this is kind of maybe you agree here. There is difficult, there's challenging, and then there's unfair.
Yeah.
And I think once you get to that point where you've got that many out of 10, I think that's unfair. I think you're not even doing sporting at that point. It's like you're asking a lot and then you're making them all super limited. It's like, well, this isn't even fun at that point. You're taking the sport out of this.
Yeah. And another Boggs collector. I mean, we've a group of us. We call ourselves the Boggs Trust. And for the most part, we're not in. I think early on, before we formed this little group of ours, there was some heated competition back and forth. We may not have known who we were, and who's this guy bidding up, and I got to outbid him, and all that stuff. Now it's more of a little community, a little group where we recognized each of our little niches and focus areas. And for this one Boggs collector, if I see a 1 of 1 or a low serial number card or a big patch card or whatever, I don't even go after it because he has more funds to devote to his Boggs collection than I do. So it doesn't make sense for me to run up a price to lose and make him pay more for it because I like the guy. He's a friend. Sure. He's a fellow Boggs collector. So we don't try to run up stuff, but yeah, it's some of the stuff is to the point where, I don't have it, but I know that I have to devote significant funds to get that card, and not just that card, but the other similar parallel card or another version of that. And if I'm going to try for these rainbows, I could be sinking $200, $300, $400, $500 into a set of like 6 rainbow cards, because they're all low serial numbered. And if you find one, you better jump on it and you better pay, top dollar or offer top dollar in an auction to try to get it because you may not see it again. I have enough rainbows in my collection. I've been fortunate enough to back in the early days, been able to do that. So I'll go so far in a rainbow now. I typically don't go after a lot of 1 of 1, so I have a lot of partial rainbows. But if I see a checklist with a ton of low serial numbered parallels, I may get 1 or 2 of the base and a couple colored ones that are out of 199 or 150 or maybe 75 or 50. Beyond that, I just people think now because of these parallels are in like $200, $300, $400 boxes, right? So they get a hit, which is this Wade Boggs card, serial number, an autograph out of 10, and they pay $200, $300 for the box, and that's maybe their biggest hit. Where they're asking $200, $300 for it. I'm like, it's not worth it. Like, I could go out and buy 300 other autograph parallel cards out of 10 of Wade Boggs. They're not, I mean, maybe not that particular card, but they're out there if I wanted a low serial numbered Wade Boggs autograph card.
Yes.
Okay. So you have on one end someone trying to make their money back on a box and maybe willing to go down. And eventually, if they keep holding it, they may want to go, okay, fine, I'll finally sell it for this or whatever. But man, some of the prices that people want for some of these parallel versions, even base parallels out of like 50, but based on the product, they're asking like $40 for a parallel certain amount out of 50 of Wade Boggs. I'm like, you're crazy. Like, so I've even gotten to the point now with I built up a great collection. I don't need to grow it exponentially at this point. So I pick and choose. So I'm getting, a lot of base cards. I'm getting some parallel cards. I picked up my first autograph card in probably 6 months or more, just because they've been going for like crazy amounts, either people paying that much or people asking way too much. And I got that for a decent price. So I'm like, okay, not serial numbered, it's a base auto. So that's where I am now in my Boggs collection. And it also helps me focus my hobby dollars on my growing vintage collection. So
absolutely. Beautiful segue. But one more thought before we get off this topic. I appreciate the kinder, gentler Boggs Trust concept. Back in the day, like, you wouldn't think so. Back in the day, it was me and there were a handful of Medano collectors. This is when on eBay, when you could actually see who you were bidding against.
Yeah.
It was war.
Yeah.
It was war.
Oh, yep.
It's like, I'm taking scalps. And you better believe the ones that had deep pockets, I'm making you pay. Yeah. I will find out exactly how deep those pockets go. And then as soon as I find that out, I will drain you dry.
I did that early on eBay. I'm one of the oldest on when it formed in 97, 99. That's when I joined. And yeah, you could see the almost the full name. It wasn't all disguised and stuff.
Oh, you could see the full name.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I started mine in 98. You could see the username. You knew exactly who was bidding against you.
And when I saw someone bidding, I mean, this one collector, he still has a lot. He sold some stuff off. He's not, I don't think he's too active in building the collection. I've never met him. I'm not even sure if I know his full name, but we would get into bidding wars and battles. And it was to the point where, all right, I'm going to bring it, and you're welcome to have it at that price, because I know that he's spending money there that I can get some other stuff. I was a little like you. I have to admit, I got to the point where I just wanted to stick it to him sometimes because he outbid me on stuff. And yeah.
I like to pretend that I've matured out of it. I haven't. As whimsically, I think back upon those days with some fondness. Now I know some of the other Medano collectors have been around for a while. Like, I met some of them later on, not the specific ones from back in the day. Those ones I haven't seen, but there's actually some other ones who were collecting around the same era that started around the same that I didn't see in those original circles. But they're much nicer, and it's one of those things like, it was so much fun when you were all my mortal nemesis. Yeah. I actually kind of enjoyed it more. Like, it fed into my sensibilities. Like, I liked going to war back then. I liked making people bleed. It was fun. And now it's like, now we got to be nice. Fine, we'll be nice, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a kind of gentler era now. It's like, but I still don't feel like I still kind of want to go to war. Y'all won't let me. Fine. But maybe that's just my problem. But anyway. Okay, so let's lean in. Let's use your beautifully designed segue there, and let's get into the vintage side of things. Now, there's a couple of elements to it. We did chat a little bit about your video series, kind of before we got started. We had your video series. That's an interesting theme. Can you kind of explain the theme itself and also what it came of it, and explain how you have $100,000?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So yes, it's 100 cards for $100,000 video series that I started, and it was just meant to be a one-time video that, I'd watch videos of, so-and-so going to a card show, and I spent $5,000 at the Dallas card show, or I spent this or whatever. and even from experiences at the National of some people dropping a lot of money on cards. And I never really had that. I don't have that type of budget. I save up throughout the year to have a decent amount at the National. But from time to time, normal collecting, I don't have a large hobby budget. So it was sort of like a dream, like a wish. It's like, man, it started off with, if I only had, like, if I had $10,000 at one time and I could go to a card show, what would I buy? And I'm like, once I started thinking about it, I'm like, man, 10,000, depending on what vintage cards, like that may not go too far, depending on the grade and the card and stuff. So I'm like, all right, let's just go for broke. Let's say I had a briefcase of $100,000. What cards? And I said, well, let's just make it an even 100. Um, what vintage cards could I add to my collection if I happen to have sitting over there $100,000? So I went through and picked some vintage cards that either I always loved the card or the player. I focused on some cards related to some player runs that I'm working on. So you see some Corey Yastrzemski cards in there.
Mhm.
I'm one card away from that playing day run, Topps playing day run. I had some Hank Aaron cards, so I put a lot of his cards in that list. It didn't include Willie Mays. There's only so much room. I happen to personally like Hank Aaron more than Willie Mays, although they're both great, phenomenal players. And I had some Mickey Mantle cards, so I said, okay, in terms of players, let me put in the run of Mickey Mantle and of Corey Yastrzemski and of Hank Aaron.
Mhm.
Then I picked a few other players, some Warren Spahn cards because the early 50s. I just love the design of those Warren Spahn cards.
Mhm.
And then I threw in some rookies, some prominent rookie cards here and there. And I came up with 100 cards that, given a certain grade at the time, they were selling for a certain range. So I went through and I had to mix and match and take some cards out and put some cards in. But I managed to be able to theoretically spend $100,000 on these 100 cards at the time in a particular grade. So again, that was hey, I put a lot of effort into it, and that's one video.
Mhm.
And I got some comments and different things. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, I have a lot of cards on this list that are $50, $75, $100, $125. I can afford those.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have a 52 Mano on there, which I'm never going to get. Okay, which takes up maybe 80% of the whole thing. Okay, but
There's a discussion I actually want to have about that, but I want to finish this thought. Please
yeah.
continue.
So, I'm like, you know what? I can actually, this can actually be like a little project of mine. Like, how
Mhm.
many of these cards can I actually get over time?
Mhm.
And so I bought the first one and the second one, and I kept going, and I'm up to 32 now, I think,
Mhm.
on my list. And so I at the end, I always do a summary. I'm like, okay, when I originally did the prices here, I said I was going to buy these cards at this particular grade. It was going to cost me X.
Mhm.
Well, in some cases, I didn't buy that particular grade. Maybe I dropped down a grade or two for budget purposes. Okay, I still have a card. And so, I'm like, hey, if I had the money, I would be X, $100 or whatever under what I thought I would have to spend. So I keep track of that as well. It's just been a fun project and goal for me, knowing that some of those cards I'm probably never going to get. But that's the thing about having a goal. Have stuff that's reasonable to obtain, but some stuff that are stretch goals that keep you motivated to try to achieve as much of that goal as possible. So I think realistically, now it may be to the point where it's one card per year that I add to the list because you're getting the more and more expensive cards.
Mhm.
But I think in theory, I could probably get to 75 plus cards if I keep at it and slowly add more cards um, for that. So that would be a nice accomplishment to maybe get 75 of those 100 cards that I would love to have in my collection. So you
No, I
wanted to
agree.
talk
Yeah.
about the mantle specifically.
No, I agree, and I think that's one of those things where I think you hit on the right note there because I think it's fun. Kind of the way that I like to present it is that when a lot of us are taking a long-term view of collecting is that we'll have all these different, different goals. Maybe we're working on sets, maybe we're working on these player collection, but there's going to be things that are like intermediate length goals, something that we're working on for a while and it'll be whatever it's going to be. And it has a beginning, middle, and end.
Mhm.
And then there's something like a player collection. Well, they're still making cards. So, and even if money was unlimited, like the likelihood is because as soon as the one of one was invented, completion was impossible. So it's
Yep.
like, that's not really a problem. Don't even worry about it. Do what you can and figure out
Mhm.
the combination that works for you, and then I think you'll be much happier. And
Mhm.
I think that's something that maybe a lot of collectors could serve to understand, that it's like, just figure out the parameters that you will enjoy, and then you will be much happier than the person who laments the fact that they cannot finish, because that's
You can.
frustrating.
I quickly learned when the Boggs cards started getting out of hand and stuff. I quickly learned I will never, no matter how much even money I had, I will never have every single Wade Boggs card out there. It's impossible because some of the stuff is in boxes that haven't even been opened yet that are sitting on someone's shelves. You can't have every card that you may want. So within your parameters, whether it be budget, collecting interest, or whatever, focus on what you can collect, and maybe it's again short-term goal, long-term goal. But I quickly came to conclusion, so I let cards go. I'm so much better now in letting cards go that show up on eBay. That, you know what? Okay, yeah, I don't need it. It's fine. I don't have to have every single card that is made.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's another an important aspect with any type of project or collection. You're not
Yeah,
going to
for
have
sure.
it all.
For sure. And kind of playing into that, so kind of what led me off of what you mentioned there about the 52 mantle is that when it came to the vintage side of things, my original concept, and I've given a little bit of the story before, was that at the time that I started collecting, one of the formative things that I had was, funny enough, not a Beckett price guide, but it was a consumer price guide. I forget what the brand was. I was able to get another copy of something similar, not the exact year and one. I still want to find the original one if I can find the one that's exactly the right one.
Yeah.
But basically, it was a price guide. It was a 92 price guide, and it was a visual price guide though, because they had pictures of the cards. And that was
Okay.
at the time my first opportunity to see a lot of these 50s vintage cards in color. So I could
Mhm.
actually see the card and see it, like, presented basically. They picked some good examples, and I was able to see the card. I was able to see the 52 tops mantle, the 53 Bowman color mantle, and eventually I would come to own most of these cards. So there came a point a couple of years back where I had most of the Mickey Mantle run, 53 tops through to 69. So I didn't have the 52 tops and I didn't have the 51 Bowman, but I had all the
Okay.
Bowmans and I had all the tops minus the rookie and minus the 52 tops, which,
Yep.
despite a lot of videos, is still not the rookie.
I
It
know.
remains not the rookie, no matter how many times you say
It'll
it. Still
always
not the
not
rookie.
be the rookie.
It remains not the rookie. This
Yeah.
this one's easy. We don't even need a Victor for it. We
Yeah.
can manage this one on our own. It is not
Yes.
the rookie. Don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
The point is, though, my original goal as a young collector was, I thought the idea was great of the complete run, the Bowman and Topps run, to the vintage. And I love the concept of it. And for years, I would accumulate these cards. And mostly I'd grab some of these poor condition cards because the goal was to keep chipping away at this big old checklist, because you don't have
Mhm.
a lot of money. So you're just chipping away at it, chipping away at
Yep.
it. And I started building a lot of these 70 sets as well as part of it. So I have a complete 79 tops, 77, 76, 75. Actually, 75, I probably have 4 or 5 cards left, but they're 75 tops. It's not that difficult. And I've got Bread and Yout anyway. So that I'll just finish that as a matter of course.
Yeah.
So a bunch of the ones in the 70s. But when it came down to it, I realized at a certain point, I'm like, I don't even really like these sets. But due respect, they're fine, but I don't really enjoy them. They're not fun for me.
Yeah.
But you know what I did like? 56 tops, 55 Bowman, 54 Bowman. I actually like them. Like, to me, I enjoy them. So to me, some of those Bowman sets made a lot of sense to me because I like 53 Bowman color. I actually like 54, as kind of boring as it is. And I grabbed a couple of examples of that. I kind of
No,
like it for what it is.
I don't have a 54 Bowman, but I do like that their overall design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually appreciate it for what it is. And I understood why it scaled back from the 53, because it was a budget thing. They
Yeah.
had actually spent so much money on 53 that they kind of lost like, this is it, guys. They thought that was like the knockout blow, and then 53 tops was such a good set. It's
Yeah.
like, nope, it's not the
Yep.
knockout blow. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, we're in trouble now. And
Yeah.
then they came back. 55 Bowman was a good last hurrah, a good solid design. I
Yep.
enjoyed it. So it's kind of cool to have that. So when all is said and done, 55 Bowman I finished, 54 Bowman I finished, and 53 Bowman color I'm working on it right now. So that's the current project. To me, that will be satisfactory. At one point, I thought about doing 52 Bowman. I had the mantle. I actually sold the
Okay.
mantle, and I
Mm.
sold it for multiples of what I bought it for because I was like, I like the card, and I have a 52 Bowman, a 52 mantle. Not that 52 mantle,
Yeah.
but 52 mantle. But at the same time, I was like, but outside of like a checkbox on my collector card, what am I accomplishing here if it's not serving me? And it's
Yep.
not actually, and that was the thing. And that brings me to that 52 tops. That was part of that run too. It is the iconic card. But I ran into a bit of a problem with it. I actually really like the card, but it became so expensive and so prohibitively so that
Yeah.
even at the low grade, I'm like, okay, aside from as a status symbol or to say a checkbox that I own one, what does it do for me? I'll have it and throw it in the safe.
Yeah.
And then what? And I was like, well, that seems like a waste of time. Doesn't
And
seem
money.
like a good use
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but even if I had won the lottery tomorrow, I
Yeah.
actually still wouldn't buy it because then now it's just not interesting to me because it doesn't go as part of, if it was part of this run, if I was
Yes.
deciding I was going to keep doing this run, then that's a centerpiece to the run, the 50s tops run.
Mhm.
But if you're not going to do that, then you're okay. This is just to show that I have money
Yeah.
because that's all I'd be accomplishing at this stage in the game. As much as I
Yep.
like the card, I can appreciate it from afar, but
Yeah.
I don't, at that point, I don't need to own it.
Yeah. I mean, when I think on my list I had it as okay, a one would still cost. It was like $28,000 or $30,000 out of the $100,000. Like a PSA one
Mhm.
would cost 20 or 30, and then for all I know, that's the list was put together in November of 2021. So who knows what even ones are going for now? Probably more. It was on my list because again, it's that iconic card.
Mhm.
I don't know, like you, if I had 10, 20, $30,000 to spend on a card or cards, I don't know if I actually would buy a 52 tops, and as opposed to saying picking up a uh maybe a 33 Gehrig plus another card plus another card plus another card for that same amount of money
Mhm.
as the 152 tops, and probably only in a PSA 1. And I enjoy looking at my cards.
Mhm.
Okay, I enjoy the eye appeal on my cards, the everything about vintage. It to me, it's enjoyable from a visual standpoint. So if the only way for me to ever get a 52 tops Mickey Mantle is in a PSA 1 or authentic, I don't know, I just to me, I just don't like collecting authentic cards. But anyway, a whole nother discussion. But let's just say PSA 1.
Mhm.
There are not too many nice looking PSA, in my opinion. You're gonna get lots of issues with the PSA 1 because it's a 1. It's a poor card. And I don't know from a visual standpoint of me saying, "Hey, look at my 52 tops Mickey Mantle, and don't mind all these creases and the paper loss and all this stuff, but I have a." To me, I wouldn't enjoy that card because I'd look at it, and one of my main criteria for collecting vintage is I want to be able to look at the card and for the most part be able to enjoy the image of the card and not be pulled away by things that are in my mind wrong with
Mhm.
the card condition wise. All right.
Now,
I want to be able to
would a
look at the
pinhole
card.
bother you?
Huh?
Are you a person that a pinhole would bother you? Because a pinhole would get you a one.
Depends where the pinhole is.
Sure, but I mean, like on
If the
border.
pinhole is in the, let's say, the top black border, so
Mhm.
you have the white and then that black line around the mantle.
Sure.
If it's in there and you can't really see it, I'd probably have no problem with it because I
Okay.
have cards that do have some creasing, leg creasing, and if in order to see it, you have to tilt it at a certain angle. Well, if you have
Mhm.
to really look to find that flaw, then typically it doesn't bother me.
Sure.
So yes, a pinhole that may cause it to be a one and otherwise stunning. That again, if I had the money, maybe.
Mhm. Sure.
But of most of the ones that PSA ones that I've seen, I'm like, even if I had the money, I wouldn't buy it because visually appealing, I just couldn't fall in love with it.
No, sure. But like the visual component of his board, I just asked the question because that's one thing that is always like a little bit of a twist, a little bit of a game. I have
Mhm.
an appreciation for some of those lower condition cards, but there is a spectrum. And this is always one of my favorite fun parts about it's a little game I like to play
Yeah.
because it is a spectrum. Even in
Yeah.
that, especially in that lower grade section of it, a lot of
Oh,
people don't quite grasp the spectrum.
yeah.
So I grabbed, we chatted a little bit before. You grabbed some cards, I grabbed some cards. So I'll do the first little demonstration here of my point. But we're going to talk about this time. I'm going to talk about the spectrum, and then I'll bring it back to that 52 tops, the thing we were talking about. So
Yeah.
let me share two cards. So first, this one, 54 Bowman. So this is from my set. So that's a 54 Bowman Mantle.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Nice.
got that left
Yep.
center. So that is indeed a one, but on the whole,
Mhm.
a fairly clean card.
Yeah.
Not too bad. Can't
Mm-hmm.
complain too much. But it is a one. It is accurately graded, but a fairly clean image. I can't complain on it too much. And right now, like I said, I can tilt it for you and you'll find out where the flaws are, but for the most part, it's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to show you another one. This one I actually got back in the mid 90s in Massachusetts from a card buddy of mine at the time for the princely sum of $35.
Hmm.
Oh, yes. That is also one. That's a proper one, you see?
Yes.
Held together by the tape, you see? We got that going on.
Missing corner. You got it. You got it all covered. Wow. Tape on the front and back.
Yes, absolutely. Come
Yes.
on. So that was the first Mickey Mantle I ever bought for $35. So that one stays in the collection because it has a nostalgic value.
Yes.
But this is a one,
Yep.
and so is this.
Yeah.
There is a spectrum, just to be clear. There is a very
There
big
is a
spectrum
spectrum. Yep.
between. But technically speaking, these are both poor condition cards. So you can play. So that's what makes it a little quirky. If you guys, so that's why I say I want to use the example as this is an extreme example, but like I'm
Yep.
sorry, these are both considered to be poor cards by definition. But
Yes.
you would be like, but there's a big difference between one and the other.
And that's what on one side is a little bit. I don't want to use the word frustrating. That may be a little bit too harsh. But when I'm looking at a card, and again, I start off with mainly how much money do I have at any given time that I could spend on this one card that I'd like to maybe add to my collection. Now I'm focused on. I'm looking for a X card. All right. So I start looking for listings and stuff like that, and I see what cards on average are selling for in a particular grade. So I basically say, all right, my budget I can afford a 4 or a 3, or maybe I can stretch things into a 5. That's as far as I go with the number grade.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Sure.
So then it's not about the number per se, but it's more of, okay, in this price range, I can go after a card that may be a little bit nicer, or one that, hey, you know what, I'm gonna have to look for ones with a little bit more flaws because the card is just very expensive. But I want to add one to my collection. So now the challenge is, as you say, there's a spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Not all 4s, not all 1s have the same eye appeal,
Mm-hmm.
because you could get a card severely off center but nicer corners versus a card that's well centered but dinged corners,
Mm-hmm.
or something with the surface. You get some snowy surface, but it's well centered and decent cornered. You can go on and on. There are all the different permutations, but from a technical standpoint, they all get a 4.
Now that does
So
give you some latitude though to play with because it does allow you as the discerning collector, it allows you to take advantage of this to your
Mhm.
benefit. You can either
Yes.
get the nicer for the grade and maybe go down a grade and then get the nicer looking version. Like I said, that card was a one, so was the other one technically. But your price point that you'd be willing to pay for both would differ tremendously, regardless of whether you want to buy the card. Regardless, there's a big
Yeah.
difference between what you would look at paying for either or.
So even within say a 4, you're going to have a price range
Mm-hmm.
that, hey, for that 4, man, that looks like someone was very generous, and that looks more like a 3 than a 4. So that one's going to sell on the lower end. Or you may say, wow, that is such a sharp looking 4. I don't know how it got a 4. Okay, maybe from a technical standpoint, oh, I see this small little thing here. It's just this. I mean, very small, but from a technical standpoint, that grader assigned it a 4. So you have a a card that you may want to pay a premium for
Mhm.
based on its technical grade. So again, my main thing is centering. I can take issues with corners. I can take some minor creasing. Obviously, if it takes into, crosses a player's face or whatever, if it's prominent, then I'm not really interested. Here's I don't know if you can move in here, but my hopefully I won't get the glare. All right, this 52 tops Bob Feller.
Yep.
All right, if you notice, they're fairly good centering. All right,
Mhm.
but if you look closer, and I know it's hard to do on here, those corners are dinged, bent in, but the main surface of the card, no creases.
Yeah, I
The
think it's a
color's
clean. It's a
nice.
clean eye appeal card. It's a
It's a
clean eye appeal
clean
card.
iPad. And so for me, that's what I look for. And it's a 2.
Mhm.
So I'm not hung up on the numerical grade. It was within my price range.
Mhm.
I think it cost me like $100. But I can't afford a nicer looking 4 because now you're getting to $400 or $500. I'm like, I'm not going to save up. Honestly, even though I love the card, I'm not going to spend $400 or $500 just to get a nicer Bob Feller when I can get one that I look at, that I can pick up and look at, and I don't notice. The first thing I don't see is the corners. The
Mhm.
first thing I see is his smiling face there and just the gorgeous colors on that card.
Mhm.
And to me, that's what collecting vintage is about. I like to, they say beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So for everyone, it's different in collecting vintage. Some people, they don't mind off center because their mindset is that's how it came printed. You
Mhm.
can't change the centering of a card. So they want ones with sharp corners. So they'll take a card that may be 80/20, but their main thing is, are the corners sharp? And that's fine. In their mind, that card, because that's how it was manufactured, okay, you can't do anything about sharp corners because over time, corners get dinged and all that stuff. So to have a card for them with really sharp corners is something that they covet and they enjoy.
Mhm.
That's great for them. For me, it's more of the visual, like the centering. The first thing I notice if the card's off center, I'm like, nope, not interested. I don't care about the corners. I don't care about anything else. I don't care about the numerical grade. It's if that card's off center, I don't want it in my collection because I'll pick it up and the first thing I'll see is that's off center, and it'll bug me. And so why spend money on a card that I can say, oh, I have this one card if I every time I look at it, I can't enjoy it from a visual standpoint.
No, I
And you
agree with
don't
that.
get you don't get that with modern cards because with all this focus of nines and tens, and I still contend you can't tell a 9 from a 10 in most cases. Um, you if you have a 10 or if you have a 9, again, you can't they're almost perfect looking cards. You can't it's very hard to tell flaws. You don't have that spectrum of,
Mhm.
well, this is a nice looking 9 versus a maybe not so nice looking 9 for the most part. And so that's, I think, for me, one of the appeals of vintage, that challenge to find, I don't want to say a perfect card, but for me, that perfect card for a certain price point um, of a particular card that I can look at and enjoy.
I think what you're describing though does add an element to it, and the other piece of it as well is that you described the particular criteria that you're looking for, as you said. So basically, predominantly, you're a centering guy. There's someone else who will focus in on corners or edges and like or color and registration, and that's like
Yep.
the most important thing. And everything else can go by the wayside. It's
Yep.
fine as long as that is correct, as long as
Mhm.
they've got that on point. And I think there's room for all of that. That's
Yeah.
why there are different cards that I think will have their different audiences depending on what you're looking for, and that does make a lot of sense. And to your point,
Because
it's gonna be its own
off-center
challenge.
cards sell. I mean, they
Yeah.
still sell. It's not like, oh, well, no one's buying off-center cards because everyone. No, they they sell. People are like, hey, if for them, they may not even care, and it may be more of a budget thing, or they want a certain numerical grade, whatever, and they'll take any card for a certain price or a certain numerical grade, and hey, I have this card. Look at it. It's cool, and they're fine with it. That's great.
Yep. I think so. Now, let me ask this, kind of playing into this category, is that you've got a couple of different runs that you mentioned that came out part of that project and everything. So, are you in the vintage side of things?
Mhm.
Are you a set collector, or is it a situation where there's certain player runs that intrigue you, certain themes that intrigue you? So, is it more themes, or are there some sets in there? Is it a mix of both? What does it look like?
It's it's a it's a mix of both.
Mm-hmm.
I mainly focus on, a few player runs. So once I get to a point buying here and there, I notice, oh, I have so many cards of this player. Maybe I'll think of doing a run. And obviously, with my budget, I can't do focus on multiple player runs at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, one card away from Kari Yastrzemski. Other than Tom Seaver's rookie card, from a vintage standpoint, up to 1980, I'm only missing his 68 card, his second year card.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm maybe in the hunt for that, and I can say I have a near complete run, and maybe someday that his rookie card's on that 100 card for $100,000 list. So maybe one day I'll have that rookie card. And then if I have his cards from, 67 through 80, then that may be something fairly inexpensive to do the 81 through 87, I think it is. That's would be fairly inexpensive, the more modern cards, and maybe do a Seaver run or things like that. But another focus is I primarily collect Hall of Famers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's player runs, but then on like a vertical axis, and then on a horizontal axis, I have um, trying to get as many Hall of Famers of a particular set.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working on, again, if a card, whether it be a manager card, a team card, leader card, you name it, base card, if it has a Hall of Famer on it, I want to. And now that is a huge undertaking. I think there's close to 2,000. Just looking at 48 Bowman to 1980, I think there's close to 2,000 Hall of Fame cards throughout those sets.
Okay.
And so I'm working on maybe they're set registries. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm closest to 78 tops. I am 2 cards away from having a PSA graded card of every single Hall of Famer in the 1978 top set.
Mm-hmm.
So again, over time, as I buy individual players, just like a crossword puzzle, those certain ones will fall into place for the years as well as player runs.
Mm-hmm.
So by happenstance, as I just keep collecting cards, sort of like a crossword puzzle, as you're buying one player, you're filling in that player's card for that particular set. So that's a long term goal for me, is to try to get as many Hall of Famers as I can from the vintage sets.
No, it sounds good. And so it sounds to me like mostly a theme kind of set because really it's not sets per se. It's kind of
No,
like these different categories that kind of intermingle. There can be some mixing in between the two, but it's like, yeah, player sets combined with, working
yeah,
on certain Hall of Famers. So we've got these subcategories and everything else.
yeah. There is one set though that I'm
Mhm.
working on building, a hand set, and that's 78 tops.
Right.
That is a special set to me. I do have, again, when I first started collecting, I had sets. So I have top sets from 1980 through, missing a few years all the way up to present, whether it be hand collated or factory sets. But I wanted to put together a 1978 tops set and not just go buy a set and say, hey, I have a 1978 top set. This is one where I'm going through every single, like, hand picking, making sure that, not that I'm going to get them graded, but if they were to grade, they'd be at least 7 or 8 quality, probably
Sure.
8. So I want them well centered, the corners. So those cards non-graded, but those cards where I'm more particular on more of the condition aspects.
Hmm.
I want the cards centered. I want nice corners. I want, the registry has to be good. No ink marks, to the best of my ability. I'm not getting all 10s, all right, or 10 quality cards, but I want to build a really nice 78 top set because that was the first year I started collecting cards. I probably won't do that for any other set. If I want, so if I had the 78, I'd be missing the 79 because I have the 80. Maybe one day I'll just buy the set in decent condition just to say, but not take the time and effort to slowly build the 79 top set or any other set. So yeah, like, as you were saying, you've done some of the mid and early 50s Bowman sets.
Hmm.
I don't see myself going beyond 78 and building a particular set.
No, I
complete
think that's
set.
fair. And it's kind of so the reason I ask is because my rationale for it was that, like I said, my original idea was to do the run. And then when I kind of abandoned that idea because it wouldn't have been enjoyable to me. At a certain point, it would become a slog because there are some sets and some cards that I truly enjoy, that I truly appreciate. And I realize I would rather just do that because then at that point, then I have the ones that I want, the ones that
Mhm.
interest me, the ones that I enjoy, a set that I'll actually leaf through from time to time and really get the
Yeah,
appreciation, as opposed to a set that goes in the box, gets thrown in there, and then it collects dust. And then what's the
yeah,
point of that? That seems pointless to me.
yeah, yeah. Because with the 78 tops, again, bringing back so many memories, and I still have, even though they're in terrible condition, all my 78 cards from when I first got them from packs, and some of
Mhm.
them, I tell the story. They landed, a lot of them landed in a kiddie pool and got wet, and my mom tried to weigh them down in books and all that, so they're still wavy and a terrible condition. But those are my original 78 top. I enjoy looking at commons, 1978 tops common cards. So that, like you, that would be one where if I, not if, when I complete it, I'd want to put that one in a binder. All
Mhm.
my other sets are in boxes.
Mhm.
And that one is one where I would enjoy going through and looking at not just the Hall of Fame cards, not just the star players, but even the commons, and can enjoy them.
Mhm. Absolutely. And that was so that's one component of it for sure, and that kind of plays into it. The other piece of it is also is that I realized that for some of those other sets, part of the reason I didn't enjoy them is that because the set itself, the design and the in the year whatever didn't speak to me for whatever reason, then the commons would annoy me. It's one of those things where I was grabbing the Hall of Famers, I was grabbing the star players to work on building the set. My theory on building sets after a while became, let me get the Hall of Famers, let me get the short prints, let me get these key cards,
Hmm.
and that way everything else becomes a lot easier comparatively after that.
Yes.
It's
Yep.
downhill. You know,
Yeah.
we took care of the big climb, and now it's all downhill from here.
Hmm.
But I was like, no, this is really miserable. Like this is just terrible, and I really hate the set. Like there's some
Yeah.
sets that I actually personally hate. Like I hate 57 tops. Like after a while I was like, I can't stand the set. Like it's just
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
Um, but for some it's very enjoyable, and for some they like it. A lot of those cars have terrible registration. A lot of them have certain issues on them. It's like, oh my, this just looks terrible. This
Yeah.
card looks
Yeah.
horrific.
And some of them are, again, for me, so hard. Just the so many cards are off center. Like for a particular, like all you see are like off center cards. I'm like, did they not make a single one of this card that was centered? Some of the just the printing quality was just not there. Like 69 has been terrible for me to add some Hall of Famers just because they're so offset. Like I can't. So I'm just like, oh, I can't buy that. I can't buy that. I just because I like just find me a well-centered card. And then when I do find one, it's a PSA 8. I'm like, I can't afford that. And it's like, so that's there's some frustration there just because of what I need as a criteria for to buy a vintage card. Other sets, they're more forgiving. The borders may be slightly bigger, where
Mhm.
you could have a 60/40 and it still looks fairly well centered. But because it's 60/40, it gets that lower grade
Mhm.
and into my price range, maybe. So certain sets have more flexibility than others in terms of centering.
I like that. That's just where the OCD kicks in. That's kind of the
Oh,
enjoyment that I have for it. Is like that.
yeah,
It appears that the centering is a triggering thing for you. Like
it
very
it
very much
is.
so.
It and oh, I don't want to put down those who, because it is a condition, and but I haven't been officially diagnosed with
Mhm.
OCD, although I have a lot of OCD tendencies, and
Yeah.
so does my dad. So I think
Mhm.
it's gone. I got
I'm
some
just
of
saying you were reacting
his
very
genes.
strongly to the off centering thing. Like that was a very visceral reaction to it.
It is, and I don't know why.
Mhm.
But it is one thing where I enjoy. I love baseball cards. I love looking at baseball cards, enjoying baseball cards.
Mhm.
And that is so everything is visual for me. And
Sure.
that's the main thing I look at. And so that's where I've built a pretty good collection so far. I've only been really building it for maybe seriously 2.5 years. I've had some in my collection all the way back, but seriously putting some effort into building my vintage collection for about 2.5 years. And again, regardless of the number grade, um, I have some really that, and to me that is the thing I'm maybe most proud of. not necessarily the cards themselves,
Mhm.
but to me, the eye appeal of the collection that I've in that sense, it's for me quality over quantity.
Mhm.
Although I want to build, I want a lot of quantity. Okay,
Mhm.
that as many as I can afford, I'd like to buy, but that it's also quality, not in terms of number grade, but because of my criteria for eye appeal.
Okay. No, I think that's fair. I think that's what I say. Like it's always that's why I say that it's interesting to have the discussion because similar to what the discussions we had earlier with the player collecting thing, you will learn a lot about the way that somebody approaches it by taking in the criteria or whatever specific little, nuances or hangups or whatever it is that they take under, and then everybody kind of develops their own thing.
Yeah.
That's why I kind of enjoy. Get to operate on both sides of it. I get to enjoy kind of the modern side of it with a little bit. I do collect vintage. I do kind of look a little side eye to the people that kind of are obsessive about vintage to the point of like denouncing everything else. It's like, guys, there's a whole spectrum of things to enjoy. There
Oh
is
yeah,
plenty of in vintage to enjoy, but it's not better. It's not better or worse. It's just different. It's a different category. It's a different set of opportunities and a different set of challengers.
yeah,
And, that, and that's
yeah.
kind of the way I look at
In fact, I did something, and I just did a dropped a video
it.
on it.
A football card.
Yes, a football card, and I put the raw copy example away, but it was a 79 tops Tony Dorsett,
Yep.
and I showed off the card that I had as a kid, and it not quite as the 54 Bowman Mantle
Well,
with the tape
few
and
are.
everything,
Come on, like that.
but
That's
it was
that's a legendary. That's a legendary piece of
that
PF
is
card.
legend. You can't top that. But mine had like a missing corner,
Sure.
several huge creases, some paper loss. I mean, crunched in. I must have carried that around in my backpack or back pocket when I was in grade school, and it just I loved that Tony Dorsett card, and it just hit me like, you know what, I would really love to get a graded copy of that
Mhm.
card, still keep and still enjoy that original card, beat to hell as it is. I still love that card, but I wanted a nicer example, so I found a PSA 8 one for like $30.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, my first really, I have a Joe Montana rookie card that I had again bought from a pack years ago, and had that graded through Beckett. So this is my first PSA vintage football card. So I've now ventured into vintage football cards. Not that I'm going to start going off on a whole new tangent there, but I can enjoy other sports. I can enjoy your modern hockey collection because I can see your enjoyment and of your collection and those players. Modern cards, again, as player collectors, I have some modern Wade Boggs cards because I
Mhm.
collect Wade Boggs. So I can appreciate modern cards. I have some frustrations with modern cards and parallels and stuff like that, but I can appreciate modern cards. I can appreciate vintage cards. I can appreciate cards of sports that I don't collect
Mhm.
because I I can enjoy other people's enjoyment. How about that?
Yeah. Well, the way I phrased it was that as long as somebody is legitimately enjoying their thing, I can both appreciate and enjoy that vicariously through them.
Hmm.
Because it's like, no, it's very clear that you're enjoying that, even if it's not something like I'm not going to collect it because I'm not interested in it. It's not something that appeals to me.
Hmm.
It, but it's the same thing. But it's funny because a lot of them. That's why I say like I try to get past folks that try to put everything inside of a tight box, because it's like, okay, I've been a vintage collector for a very long time. That doesn't make anybody superior.
Yeah.
I've seen plenty of vintage collectors that are big jerks who don't know anything. Just trust me on this.
Yeah.
They don't know anything. They're not special, and some of them just have more money than brains, and they build great collections for nothing else, and they're just willing to throw money at the problem. That
Yeah.
doesn't make them great collectors. That just makes them somebody with money.
Yeah.
They just don't have taste, but
And
they
because
manage.
in my whole long drawn out explanation of what I find appealing in vintage cards, I don't then follow up and say, and that's how you should collect vintage cards. No, that's how I collect vintage cards. That's how I enjoy vintage cards. How you enjoy vintage cards or how someone else enjoys vintage cards, that's completely up to them. And if they enjoy the way they collect, that's great. I'm happy for them. So yeah, I don't say my way is the way to collect or the best way to collect, because it's not for everyone.
See,
And there's the
that's
dog
agreement.
again.
That sounds like agreement. No, I agree. You're
They're,
here.
they're getting ready for their bedtime. So
Sounds good. Sounds good. So what we'll do is we'll start winding her down a little bit, but before we do, we'll finalize it on this piece. And I appreciate this portion of the discussion as well, because it's one of those things where it's kind of fun to go down this rabbit hole, because it is a different set of things that people are looking for. That's
Mhm.
why I wanted to kind of get a sense of your approach to it, and we'll see what it plays out as. So let me ask you this, and then we'll close off with a couple of favorite cards, because I did grab a couple more here that we'll stack. Plus, despite my hatred of the Yankees, and I do have an appreciation for one of them. I already showed one card from them, but I've got two other ones here that I've saved. And I do have a Brooklyn Dodgers, so we'll have that as well. So
Okay.
I'll touch on that here in a second. But I know you're working on that index that you did with Mike Baseball Collector and that.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
have you guys still playing around with that? How is that going? Are you finding anything that surprises you?
Um. Lots of good questions. We're still continuing the series. In fact, I'm
Mhm.
trying to get on Mike's schedule here to do the latest one for quote unquote for December. Even though it's in January, it's prices as of December. So
Mhm.
we're still doing that. We're not quite at a full year of doing it yet, and it's something that we enjoy doing. We know there are some flaws in it, and it's recognizable, and we know its limitations. So maybe to
Mhm.
take a step back for those maybe that not familiar with it, I think it was on maybe one of Baseball Collector's Golden Age of Cardboard set of videos
I think so, yeah.
where he was talking about, man, I think how vintage card prices have held up during a recession or this or whatever. And he says, boy, it'd be cool to know, like, to chart certain cards over time and things like that, and have like an index. And I'm just a nerd for crunching numbers. I love it. I love analyzing numbers and seeing maybe patterns or trends. And so I said, yeah, hey, let me. So I started the concept. I threw the concept out there, and and I think I did maybe one series. And then Mike reached out to me and said, hey, he says, I'd love to be a part of this. I'm a geek as well with numbers, and so the both of us have combined to do this monthly series where we take 100 cards of mainly Hall of Fame rookie cards
Mhm.
and have charted the price of them over time. Beginning, we went as far back as 2019, because again, the data is out there, but it's all hand entered. That's
Mhm.
just 12 months of data for 100 cards. That's a lot of data entry. So we did what we could going back to 2019. So we've charted that, noted some things at different time periods within decades, certain decades, whether those cards are going up or down relative, say, the 50s cards or the 60s cards. So it's been a fun exercise, but again, and it's been pointed out in some of the comments, we use a collector grade of a particular card.
Mhm.
So if it's a 1965 uh, Topps Steve Carlton rookie card, we'd chart the value in a PSA 6. If it's a 1948 Bowman Yogi Berra rookie card, we'd have it in a 4 and track that price. Okay. Well, as we mentioned before, there's ranges, there's a spectrum of eye appeal for even a particular grade when it comes to vintage. So you're going to get a range of prices, sold prices for a particular grade. And so we chart things and we say, okay, well, geez, hey, this card went up this month. Well, it could be a simple case of it was a very nice eye appeal card for that particular grade, and someone paid a slight premium for it. And
Mhm.
then next month, hey, what do you know? The price went down. Well, why was that? Well, maybe it was because the next sale, the card didn't look as nice for that for, or it went back to normal. So it, individual monthly changes are hard to analyze and say, well, what does this mean? So it's more of looking at the trends.
Mhm.
You can clearly see that bubble that started building in the beginning of 2021, and then the crash, and that we're at a new higher norm, so to speak, where things now are starting to trade into a relative small band
Hmm.
but it's higher than it was pre-pandemic, but lower than that pandemic rise. But again, there's it's not perfect, and we also this isn't a meant to be any type of advice.
Mm.
So we're not saying these are the cards you should buy. These are the hot vintage cards now, or I'd if you have this card, maybe now's a good time to sell. We don't get into any of that. It's just a fun exercise that we enjoy doing, is just crunching numbers. Um, but yeah, I would say that do you notice any trends or things going on with those small group of vintage cards that we look at, those 100 cards? Um, Vintage is starting to perform as it did pre-pandemic. Slow and steady. You're going to get a couple ones that start maybe doing some peaking here and there, but for the most part, those 100 cards are over the long period slowly going up in price, slow and steady. The tortoise,
Hmm.
like you saw for vintage pre-pandemic, and not the large volatility now that you're seeing in maybe other sports and modern cards that are still see a lot of volatility from some of the highs that happened over the last couple of years.
Sure. I think it's going to be something interesting to keep an eye on because to your point, the concept of the index is such that you're focusing on Hall of Fame cards, you're focusing on the collector grade, as you said. There is the variances in the condition based on eye appeal, which creates a whole different set of things. One of the things that I'm keeping an eye out on that is going to be interesting for me, and I'm thinking longer term, is that I do think the set collector is going a little bit of the way of the dinosaur. Not that they're going to be gone forever, but it's less so. And I explained kind of part of my rationale why, as a person who collects vintage, as a person who at least has an appreciation of it, it becomes less appealing as time goes on because maybe I just want certain cards. Which could very well mean that it could be a situation where having an index with these Hall of Famers, the index could still continue performing in that steady way, but maybe the cards that comprise some of these sets could slide because
Yeah.
even if they sustained, and this is where I think sometimes people get confused with this. So with some of these cards, even if they sustain, if we look at inflation, and inflation's a thing, technically they would have to go up if for no other reason than to maintain just their level from before.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if they don't, they're actually losing value every year that goes by. So in
Yes.
reality, being static in that case is basically a decline without saying so. It's because
Hmm.
$100 is not worth what it was before. So
Yeah.
we keep adjusting the market accordingly. So Tonus Wagner could keep selling for record prices. 52 Tops Mano could keep selling for record prices. So here's the question. The index is comprising of a very specific subset of cards and trying to figure them out as an indicator of the market.
Hmm.
But when I look at the 52 top set, it's 407 cards. 406 of them are not the 52 Tops Mano.
Yeah.
So here's the question. If Mantle goes up, if Jackie Robinson goes up, if Eddie Matthews goes up, if all of those are doing great, and I can buy a common for $10, whereas before it was 15 or $20, is the market going up or is the market going down?
Yeah. Y- we we say a lot. The 100 cards in the index, you can't infer that whether the index goes up or down, whether vintage cards in general are
Mm-hmm.
going up or down.
Sure.
Because I mean, specifically 52 top set. Yes, you could have certain key rookie cards or certain players, maybe in the high series, the short prints.
Mm-hmm.
Those are still maybe maintain their value more than the common cards in the earlier series. All right. And yeah, you can have some segments in the vintage market. I hate to use the word market, but I said it, the vintage market, where you have some cards still performing well, while others, based on demand, it's really supply and demand. There's a less of an interest in those common cards that may, at one point in the past, be at a higher demand because people want to complete the set.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's less interest in completing the sets, those common cards, for the most part, even though they're vintage, are may go the way of modern common cards. And because one of the things that I don't want to get on my soapbox here, it's off the topic, but one of the things that just bugs me because I just love baseball cards in general is, man, I see people do videos and they'll open up a blaster box or whatever, and they'll just take a big swipe of the first set of cards, set it off to the side. What inserts did I get? And then the last group of cards that are just the base cards, they set it off to the side. Maybe look for the newest rookies, but everything else, they don't even bother looking at the cards. It's here's the group, set off to the side. What inserts did I get? Did I get a big hit? Nope. Okay, well, that was a bust. That because they're not in to me. Sorry, that's for the next next video thing that we would do in the future. But of the lack of interest in commons, it could very well be for vintage that those common cards sort of go that way. It could happen, and people just, I mean, you have some interest in the T206 set that go beyond the key players, the Hall of Famers, but you have to have an interest in the T206 set. If you're not really interested in those tobacco cards, those commons you don't really care about. But for those that really may not necessarily want to complete the whole set, because that is a challenge, the T206 set, even without the Honus Wagner and other short prints. It's very hard to complete that set. So most people just, they collect them to enjoy them, and they will get common players, minor leaguers that are in that set.
Or back variations, because there's some different themes you can play around with that actually give additional life to some of those cards.
Horizontal cards within the set. You could do a whole set of the horizontal cards, and like you said, the different backs and stuff. So T206 may be unique in that sense, that may long-term hold value for non-Hall of Fame star cards. But yeah, I can definitely see 50s, 60s, 70s common cards not perform so well in the future, because maybe less people will be wanting them to complete sets. And then why else would you want the cards? Sort of like what's happening with modern commons now.
Yeah. Well, the irony was the argument, like I said, and I'm not. My goal isn't just to pick on the vintage guys, although it's kind of fun. They do get worked up. That's kind of great. And again, I've earned the right. I can make fun of them as much as I want. But the thing is that the idea that the vintage has its value because it is rare, which is true to a degree, and it depends on the items. And that the scarcity is more organic and not as artificial. Fine. I would point you to the Nap Lajoie, which wasn't issued until enough people complained. That would be the definition of artificial scarcity. It literally wasn't issued.
Yes.
But let us move past that for a moment.
Yeah.
But the idea though is that demand still matters in this equation. If we're talking about value, demand matters a lot.
Absolutely.
The fact that a card is very rare is wonderful, and that's a great piece of the equation. But if no one cares and no one wants it, it's still a piece of paper.
Yeah. And it'll sit in a display case in a show, and there'll be no takers.
Yes.
And because, I mean, you could say, well, there's only 2 of these cards graded by PSA. Well, that's nice. I'm just not interested in it. Okay. And if more people say I'm not really interested in it, then again, what's then waning interest or demand always leads to, again, all else being equal, to lower prices. It's just basic supply and demand, because there's a finite supply. Unless cards get destroyed, they're not making any more vintage. So finite supply, and if interest goes down, then over time, it may take a while for those prices to get down, but they would go down. And conversely, if everyone wants to buy a 1968 Topps Pete Rose, well, by golly, his prices are going to go up because everyone wants them. And those who have them can say, oh, well, you want this? Well, okay, the price is now this.
It's true. And that's always an important. I hate to keep beating that dead horse, but I do have to occasionally remind that supply and demand requires both components of this in order for it to work. If you expect the price of something to go up, even over time, the demand has to exist, or it has to be there, and it has to be consistent, because 50s and 60s cards, to be blunt, are not rare.
No.
There are some there are some very specific issues that are rare, but something can also be so rare that most people don't know about it. And even if they do, they're like, oh, that's kind of neat. And I think people forget that there's a lot of collectors who's like, that's kind of neat doesn't translate to me buying. It doesn't
Yeah.
translate to me giving you money for it. It could be like, oh, that's kind of neat. Tell me about it. Oh, that's interesting. Have a good day.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
leave. I'm interested in hearing about it. I don't actually want to spend money on it, but
Yep.
I'm still interested in hearing the story. Tell me the story.
Hmm.
But that's different than buying. Buying
Yeah.
is what's going to cause those prices to either go up or down. That's part of the equation that we have to
Yeah.
remember. It's just something to keep in mind. I have to kind of occasionally remind. And since I don't get to talk about vintage as much, when I get the moment, it's like, let me just remind you that supply and demand, both sides are required.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, I mean, it's not just vintage. I mean, it's
Everything.
too it now there may be a different component with modern, let's say basketball cards that have just my understanding. I don't have any, but I mean the modern graded basketball cards have taken a hit. Um, I don't necessarily think that there's has to be some component of demand,
Mhm.
but in some cases, because of some backlogs, you're seeing more of the graded supply enter. So now, even with a steady demand, if you have more supply being added in terms of graded
Mhm.
population, right, that would tend to push things down. And it sort of goes with the demand that people are saying, like, you know what, I that's way too overpriced. That's just I'm not willing to pay that price for it. So in some sense, it's a demand issue. They may still want that card,
Mhm.
but they may say, I'm just not willing to pay that price for it because the last 3 sales have been going down. So why should I pay more than the last sale? Because I see a trend. So I'm going to offer you less and see if you can sell it to me for less. The demand's there, but their willingness to pay the current price is forcing things down. So it's not necessarily a supply or demand. There's another invisible force going on there. I think it's some modern cards that it's pushing the price down further because they're seeing trends and they're not wanting to. They don't want to pay too much for that card, even though they want it because they see it's and maybe initially it was demand. Maybe that supply demand force started the downward trend, and now people are just saying, well, no, you can't get that much for that now, so I'm only going to offer you that. And if it sells, then there's another data point saying, oh, the next person says, oh, you see that? Now there's 4 sales going down. Well, I'm only going to pay this for it, even though the demand may be there.
Yeah.
So it's
Well,
very, by the way, I was an econ major in college. So
yeah.
that's why, yeah.
Yeah, I spent a year in econ drawing supply and demand curves, so that's why. When the moment came, I got to do a video where I grabbed one of my old textbooks. Like, all right, people, we're gonna go back to the basics. I'm literally gonna open this to
Yeah.
the page here. We're gonna look at it together. It
No.
was it was a joke. I
I
had so
actually
much fun.
did a video, maybe it was like a year and a half ago, but I threw up supply demand curves and I said, okay, if and then you get the movement, you get a certain supply, but then the demand goes here or there, and then hey, that's what the price goes. And oh yeah, I geeked out on that one.
Yeah.
I don't think that got too many views though.
No, I think when you invoke the supply and demand curves, I don't think it's gonna quite work that way.
Yeah, they're like, oh no, no, no. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But the
But
but the reality of it is though that your point is 100% right. But a lot of those things, if there is some demand there, it'll find its price point. I think that's important. Part of the reason though that like I said, part of the reason I pick on the vintage guys is that they also sometimes have an inflated sense of superiority. They assume that vintage is superior inherently because of the quantity available. I'm like, that doesn't mean anything. If a next generation really genuinely doesn't care, and you're just assuming they will, that's not necessarily true. Maybe they will,
yeah,
maybe they won't. Maybe they'll have an appreciation for it, maybe they won't. Or maybe the appreciation will be focused in certain categories that will continue to do well,
yep,
and then other ones will fall by the wayside. And you may have thought it was an across the board thing. It's like, no, not
yeah,
necessarily. What if
yeah,
they do appreciate vintage and they just want Mickey Mantle? Or they just
yeah,
want Willie Mays or Jackie Robinson? And that's it. And then Yogi Berra and Whitey Ford and all those just fall off the wayside because they're not wanted.
yeah,
That could totally happen. When Walter Johnson prices go down. Why? Not because Walter Johnson's bad, but because they're just not willing to throw money at Walter Johnson. Nothing to do with
yeah,
his place in baseball history, but that's the important distinction that I make. It's not just the one element. We got to put the two pieces together and then see how they fit, and then that'll
yeah,
give you a better visual of what's going to happen.
yeah. I I think you may have been the first one that I've talked to that correlated a potential change or question about future demand or interest in vintage cards at that set level and started talking about the commons cards or semi-stars. Because I think I think vintage collectors in general, and I think I may have even been guilty of doing it. We talk about vintage cards in general and think that all are going to go up or down because they say, okay, well, hey, it's a good thing maybe that some of these younger generations are getting into vintage. So that's good for the future of vintage cards, meaning all vintage cards. Well, it, like you said, there could very well be a case that's not all vintage cards, that only certain vintage cards maintain demand and interest over the next 20, 30, 40 years. And you can go to tables and it's almost like dollar boxes of 52 tops commons. Maybe not to that extreme, but just, hey, yeah, I got these ton of 52 tops commons because no one like they want the mantle, they want this, they want that, and I can't get rid of these. So they're in maybe not dollar boxes, but five. You know what I'm saying? That
But basically, even with inflation, even if it was 10, 15, $20, by that point, 10, 15, $20 might be the equivalent of like a couple of dollars in today's parlance by that stage, because it didn't keep up. And the
yeah,
issue was just that the demand fell off, and then all of a sudden, the supply, which felt like, oh, maybe the supply is, well, what about all those collectors who actually have complete sets, who actually have a decent amount of these cards that are sitting on them today, and at some point need to move them for whatever reason? They're getting older, they pass away, whatever the case may be. Those go back on the market, and there's not a replacement buyer to
yeah,
buy this whole collection. Maybe there's
yeah,
a couple of people that grab a couple pieces they want, and the rest of it just sits.
yeah. And again, you can make that case for vintage, even that whatever you want to call it, the classic period. So you get from 81 to maybe the late 90s, 2000s, or whatever before modern. You're going to get at some point, maybe at the end of our lifetimes, that same thing of, okay, well, are those cards going to maintain interest? And what about those? So it's a continuation over time between the different decades of sports cards, and we've mainly been talking baseball cards, but sports cards in general, is at what level or what card's going to maintain the level of interest over time. And maybe only time will tell.
I agree. I agree. Just like I said, kind of what we talked about or before we even started recording is that I like to take, when the opportunity presents itself, let's take that deeper analytical approach and talk about some of those components of it, and then at the same time, solely annoy portions of the audience, and then I was able to annoy some of the modern guys. I was able to
Yep.
annoy some community people, and I was able to annoy the vintage guys. I feel like I've hit the
Equal
trifecta. I'm so
opportunity.
happy.
This
I'm
you
so
can
happy.
you can label this a equal opportunity offender podcast or episode. Yeah.
I dare I strive for this every time. It's like, so I just try to annoy them all equally, and that's what makes it great.
Yeah.
Very good stuff. All right, let's finish off on some cards. We'll finish off on some
Yeah.
cards. Everybody enjoys that. So
Yeah.
I'll show a couple of my favorites. Right now, one of my projects that I'm working on at the moment is the 53 Bowman color I mentioned, but I'm not going to show one of those. The other one that I'm also kind of working on, I've got a little pipeline of intended sets that I'm working on. Really, I only have the bandwidth to be focusing on a few at a time. So I've got the 63 Fleer baseball that I'm working on. That's one.
Yep.
But then I'm also doing the 53 Bowman color. But right behind it, when I get a chance to finish one of those two, probably 63 Fleer will finish first. But when I get a chance, I'll be able to start focusing some of it. But I've been picking up pieces from the 53 tops. So I want to have the other 53 set to go along with it. So there's the Roy Campanella.
That's a nice campy.
Yeah, that was a good solid one. I picked that one up at the Toronto Expo because apparently they don't have just hockey cards.
Oh.
Who knew? The allegations are not true.
Yeah.
Good solid card.
Yes.
So good eye appeal, good solid card. This one has been sitting in my collection for quite some time. This is probably my favorite card other than, well, let me do my favorite card first. So my favorite card is the 56. I love the 56. And if you look where his hat is, it has a hole.
Oh.
That's how you get a one.
Yeah.
That's how you do it.
Again, the first thing I didn't notice that, and that again at this level of vantage point with me not seeing it right away, yeah, wouldn't be a bad one. Although I think I am in the vast majority, minority, I should say, the vast
Mhm.
minority, in saying that the 56 Tops Mantle doesn't do a whole lot for me. It's a nice card, but I don't.
But which is
And
the favorite
again,
then?
either, and it
Mhm.
might time to show here.
Go ahead.
Either his that you had mentioned that you had it at one
Yeah,
point,
at a
the
52 Bowman. Yep.
52 Bowman.
Which is a great card. Which is a great card. The issue with the
Yeah.
card wasn't that I didn't like the card. The issue with the card was that I had purchased it for about $400, and I sold it for 2,000. And if I'm not
Yeah.
going to do the set, it's silly for me not to leave the money sitting on the table.
Yeah. And the other one would be the 53. There we go. Mine's in a 2.5.
Yeah,
Off centered a little bit.
Yeah, mine's a SGC1 from the old
Yeah.
style.
But really, I mean, the eye appeal is like almost identical.
Yeah.
It's
This right here, this would be my
technical.
second. This is right here is my close one. If the 56 for me is the one, this is like the 1A. So this
Yeah.
one right here, that's a centerpiece card that I wanted to have. That's why I said when I got the 53 and I finished that Mano run, outside of, again, the 52 and the 51 Bowman,
Mhm.
that was the collection that 8-year-old me always wanted. So that in itself, just having the Mano run, even as far as I got to it. Of course, I
Yeah.
would have loved to have had the 52 and the rookie, but at the same time, it's like just having this card and those other ones that went along with it. It was like
Yeah.
8-year-old me would be extremely jealous of the collection that I put together.
Oh
at that
yes,
point.
yeah. Getting back to the 56, I would probably put that in terms of the eye appeal. I know it's the other appeal is that was the year he hit the Triple Crown, right?
Mhm.
So there's that
And the first year post
aspect.
Bowman, and I just
What?
think that the first year post Bowman, and I think that 56 top set with the large checklist for the 50s is actually really well built. A
Yeah.
lot of Hall of Famers and the last
again,
Jackie card and a lot of stuff.
great set. And I'm not saying I hate that mantle card, but for me, I don't know, the design of that, everyone says, well, look at Mantle's smiling. I sort of, I don't know. For me, again, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So because I may not rank the 56 top as high as others, doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with that card. But I would maybe put the 54 Bowman above the 56 tops. In terms of the design, maybe 52 above it. Again, not talking about the whole god awful high prices for the 52 tops Mantle, but just the design itself. And there's one other one. I can't think of it right now, but maybe another one that I would put ahead of the 56. But that's just me. I would love to own a 56 Mantle. It's on my 100 cards for $100,000.
Gray back or white back?
Oh,
this is
I think I have
this is minutia of minutia. So
yeah,
unnecessary.
I know. I think I have the is the white back the rarer. I forget now.
It's very marginal difference between the
It's
two.
mar-
So this
marginal
one
difference?
is the gray back. So this one's the
Okay.
gray back. And the running joke that I had for years is that this would probably be the only card that I would get a duplicate on purpose just to have the white back to go with the gray.
Yeah.
I don't care. I have a 56 top set. I have combination of the backs. I have a buddy of mine who was deranged, and he was a dedicated collector. Now, he did do the Bowman and Topps run, and he did it as working in a supermarket. Now, he started back in the late 80s, early 90s building it out. He was the one who sold me that 54, this particular one
Okay.
back in the 90s. But at the time, he had like a whole closet built out where basically he had all sets and everything. And I started going through them, and I got a chance to flip through a complete 52 top set, including the man on the whole 9 yards. And at that point, I was 13. And I got a chance to flip through it, complete 52 set, all the Tops run, all the Bowman run. I got to flip through everything. He sold me this one out of some extra cards he had in it, so I got it straight from that collection. But he built it out as a guy who worked in a supermarket early on, was a lifer, and then eventually basically just was one of the managers in the supermarket. But he had built this collection that you cannot possibly build on that pay and that salary ever again.
Yeah.
But he also was a guy who would get so bored that he built a 56 top set with both sets of backs, and he would do the variations and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then he started building the football. He also had the football sets from the 50s and all of that stuff. But then he started doing second sets. So he got bored and he would and I think he did a second 56 top set.
Wow.
after the first one.
Yeah.
So like at that point, it's like, find something else to do, man. So I
Yeah.
started doing the T205 set, and I was like,
Okay.
all right, enough out of you.
Yeah.
I'm done with you, sir. Enough of this discussion. I don't
Yeah.
ever want to get to that point, John. I'm not going to do it.
No.
Like I'll be honest with you. I don't want millions of cards. Just philosophically, I do not want millions of cards.
Yeah.
I have my collections, my player collections that I love. Though those are great. I have my vintage projects that I'm working on. My dream is to finish that 53 Bowman color, which I will do.
Mm-hmm.
I want to work on this 53 top set. I'll work on it. It's going to happen. I need the Willie Mays so that I officially have that'll be the launch of the set when the time comes.
Yep.
Because I got the mantle and I got a bunch of other Hall of Famers. But as soon as I get the Mays, it's like game on. So
Yeah.
that's official game on for that set.
Yeah.
I want to have those 253 sets. I want to be able to look through them and leaf through them. They're awesome. And I've got a handful more that I'm at least part of the way through, either half a set or close to a little over half a set. 60 tops, 70 tops is just high numbers I've got left. I'm going to finish it just to get it over with.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, it's like, you know what? I'm not retired from collecting. I still have stuff I'm interested in doing.
Yeah.
But after that, I'm not going to devote nearly as much money or energy into this outside
Yeah.
of just my player collection.
So yeah, and I think someone had brought that up in some past discussion, not too long ago. Is do you have as a collector? Do you have a point where you say, I'm done. I've reached my certain goals, and I'm not interested in anything else, and either a complete stop or maybe like you is all right. I'm going to pull back on the throttle now. I'm really taking a step back, maybe buying something that may catch my eye here and there, but for the most part, I'm done putting a lot of effort, maybe money and time into my collection. For me,
That collection, by the way, just to be clear,
yeah,
I love watches.
okay,
And nothing would make me happier than be like, all right, I've got these 50 sets that I wanted. I got these other vintage sets that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
The Medano thing will never end because they'll always make more. So
Yep.
I'll keep getting stuff as time comes along. But all right, it's time for me to get my watches.
Yes. There you go. Again, a lot of people think of like, well, you can have multiple collections, not even, I mean, totally different things. Yeah, for me, I think Boggs will always be there again,
Sure.
maybe to a low level. And I think I've set enough targets or projects, again, with the whole Hall of Fame collection stuff, that I don't think I'll ever get to completing those. And again,
Sure.
they're goals, they're long-term goals. There's stuff that I can shoot for, but it's ones that, hey, if it may take me 30 years to get to some of this stuff. Now, again, who knows? My situation may change where I have more money to devote. That could speed things up. So maybe at some point it would be like, oh, geez, I've gotten all the Hall of Famers from all these sets, and I've gotten this and I've gotten that. Is from a vintage standpoint, maybe there may be a time as well that I could come and say, you know what, I've gotten all the cards that I would ever think that I would want, and why would I start buying stuff just to buy? I don't think I'd ever get to a point where I would just say, geez, I got money and all right, I'll buy that. I don't really care about it, but I'll buy it. No, I have to have a certain interest in a particular card to buy it. So yeah, who knows? Maybe there's a point that I would come to hey, let's pull things back. Let's still, because I'm sure even by then they'll be making Madonna cards and Boggs cards. All right, pick a few of them up and stuff like that, and maybe that's how I just sort of fade off.
Yeah. That's the thing, though. It's like I just never have been subscribed to the idea. I just don't want to be at a point where I'm buying stuff to throw in a box in a collection that is like just for the hell of it.
Yeah.
It's like that at that point, that's no longer fun to me. Like that kind of defeats the point of this entire thing. I want whatever the collection ends up being, whatever it ends up, I want to make sure that I can go through it and be like, all right, I'm looking forward to going through this. Let's do it. Let's scan through the pages. Let's scan through the cards. This will be fun. That's what I want.
Yep.
So I think that makes
You
sense.
have to forgive me. You made a comment of bidding on a Madonna card, so I'm just putting here a bid that I'll lose, but on a I'll bid. All right.
Yeah.
I was going after one of the 100 cards for $100,000. Had my eye on one. Had a then I was outbid. But plenty of other ones out there for me to take a gander at. It's one that I think is one of the more beautiful ones on my list, and who knows, maybe I'll get one at the national, if not before that. So
Nice.
yeah, I had at least try to
Look,
pick
I
that one up
understand.
there.
The Ermsey trout goes for a lot. I get it. I get it.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
I
you
understand.
caught me. You caught me. I was
Well,
well.
with the preamble that you gave,
The
like it was
artist.
obvious.
It was the artist one, the low serial signed by Ermsey or whatever. Is
Oh yeah.
that special one?
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's
All the Ermsey trouts are special.
yes.
All very special. Anyway, all right. So I think we'll wind her down on that. Now, actually, before I do, was there any other card that you had there, a handful that you wanted to show? I grabbed a couple just to show that were specifically fun for me. Just I thought I would include those. I got to include the 53 Tops Mana when I can, especially when you grabbed yours at the same
Oh
time. I was like, perfect. Love it.
yes, yes. I will show off one other one that is sort of one of my all time favorite cards. One that was on my one day I would love to own list, and
Sure.
that is the T206 Christy
Nice.
Mathewson Dark Cap.
Dark cap. Very nice. Very
Sweet
nice.
cap roll
Very,
back.
very good.
Sorry about the glare there.
No, that's all right.
But that is just one that Christy Mathewson has a local tie to my area. Grew up in central Pennsylvania. He went to Bucknell University, which is right across the river from where I grew up. I believe he's buried in the Lewisburg, where Bucknell University is, Lewisburg Cemetery. I got my master's degree from Bucknell. So there's that little Matty tie, but obviously one of the greatest pitchers of all time. And I love that dark cap image. So that was one of my early Grail cards for me to get. And so I've had that for several years. But the other one here, we talked about certain cards, certain the classifications or features of a card that centering is it for me and all that stuff. This was one heck of a card for me to add. It was a fairly new one. It's for my Kari Yastrzemski run, and it's the darn 69 tops.
Yep.
And I finally, so I ended up getting this in a PSA 7, but
The one that you also mentioned was a set that was a source of frustration for you.
Set of frustration, particularly this card, and the reason why it's so hard, and because I've seen many copies. I've looked at many copies in various grades. I was even Yastrzemski was one of the ones where the player run. I do want nicer overall examples, just because it's the Kari Yastrzemski run. Other player runs, I don't care if I have 3s, 4s, you name it. Okay, but for Yastrzemski, I wanted a nicer card. But there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, at least 4 common printing flaws on the 69 Yastrzemski, in addition to being commonly off center. So again, wanting a nicer copy, and one that, since I've seen it so many times, I pick up all those little flaws. And it goes, again, my OCD kicks in, and I say, so I look every time I look at a 69 Yastrzemski, I look for those. Okay, does the card have that? Does the card have that? Meaning the print errors. There are ones that the little print marks, little blotches at the top white border. In fact, it's a white border card. There's stuff across his neck. There's stuff across his arm and hand. And I finally found one that didn't have all of them not there. There's one of them. One of the 4 was present here. But, they say, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. This is 1 out of 4 centered. I jumped on this thing as soon as I saw it, because I said, I finally got my 69 Yastrzemski. So again, it's the stories sometimes, or the struggles in finding the quote unquote perfect card that I also like about this hobby. And you can have the same thing with modern. It's not solely related to vintage, but you can remember, oh, I picked this up at the National, or I struggled so hard to find this card, and because of that, it's very special to me, as opposed to, like you said, buying a card and just sticking in a box somewhere and say, yeah, I have it, and you even forget maybe what it looks like because you bought it so many years ago. And this is what I like about my collection. I can look at every card, and there's like a little story, maybe a small little story, but there's something behind the card beyond just the card.
No, I think that's I think that adds the element to it. That gives it that little extra. I've joked about it on the, and I think I even did in the last conversation I did, because right here there's one card that's in the Medano collection. It's a modern
Mhm.
one. It's one of the Medano patch cards. But the reason it's relevant is because the print run on this is 12. This was from the early 2000s, so 2001, 2. So I knew about it when it originally came out. It was called Country of Origins. It's a little Team USA patch, so it's got the stars and bars and the whole thing on that little patch piece.
Mhm.
Game used from the All Star game they had that year, and the thing is, the print run was low. It was difficult to come by at the time, and I was underbidder on about 3 or 4 different copies. So out of the print run, it's not like I've got a lot of options. When it goes in somebody's collection, it's a lot of the people that would buy them. It was buried in that collection, and
Yeah,
with the print run being 12 in the first place, if you're underbidder in 3 or 4 of them, it's not like I've got a million kicks at the can here.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when I finally did it, it's like I finally was able to get a deal with a guy who had one. We came to an agreement, and I paid more than anyone has ever paid for that stupid card, because I was underbidder on a couple of different ones, and it was getting increasingly frustrating. I was like, I'm going to have this card. You're going to sell it to me,
Yeah.
and we came to a deal. But it was like very, very frustrating.
Y- Frustrating, and but at the same time, again, you looked at that card, which again, which separates, and again, this is for another discussion another time, but
Mhm.
um, that separates you from, yeah, you overpaid, but I think overall, it sounds like you're very happy to have that card in your collection, and you're not so much worried about, oh, can I sell that and make my money back? Now, again, you may find yourself in a situation at some point in time, as all of us may, where we have to sell some of our cards. But it sounds like, again, the way you described how you fought and tried to get that card and paid a lot more than the other copies sold because you wanted that card that has a special meaning to you, and you're not so much concerned whether the card holds its value or that you'd be able to make your money back if you were to go to sell it because you, at least for now, you want that card in your collection. Is that maybe a correct
I,
statement on your
I I
end?
think it's fair. Like, look, it would be difficult for me, but I would definitely sell my Mike Trout Superfractor first, long before I would sell that card. So
Yeah.
if that tells you anything,
Yeah.
I would sell my
Yeah.
Mike Trout
And
Superfractor
and, and
easily
that's
first.
how I look at a lot of my collection. I am a I'm not a collector, I'm a hoarder. I've
Mm.
probably only sold about 20 cards in my life. And regretted most of them. And I've been trying ever since then, trying to buy those cards back to add to my collection. So I'm a hoarder. I'm not a collector. So I'm on the one extreme. But to me, if I had to pay a little bit extra to get this Yastrzemski, which I don't think I did, but if I did, it's like, oh, it's worth it. And I don't care if someday I have to sell because of financial situation or whatever, I'm not going to be too worried about whether I make my money back on that because um, I'm so happy to have this particular card in my collection and it's worth to me, what I paid for it, not maybe what someone else may pay for it a year from now.
I think that's completely fair, and I agree with the sentiment. But I always got to give my little trout dig because it's fun.
Yes.
But no, that's a perfect note to conclude this one on. A wonderful conversation, John. A pleasure chatting with you
Thank you.
for
I,
these
I I
nostalgia.
was really looking forward when you reached out to me. I was really looking forward to this because I knew it was going to be beyond just hey, yeah, show this card. Let's talk about that card, which again has its place within these types of videos. But I knew this was going to be more of a thought-provoking discussion, intellectual conversation, some poking here and there, the whole gamut.
I've been
But
known to do that sometimes.
I was really looking forward to being on this and doing this video with you. So I appreciate the invite, and hopefully this won't be the last time that we get together for a similar conversation.
No, absolutely. We've definitely got some other items that we can touch on, but I thought I keep it mercifully short for people so that
Yes.
hopefully, while drinking a quick cup of coffee, they could have it. Look,
Yes.
guys, these collective conversations sometimes take time. There's thoughts that are developed, so there will be a part two. I've had a couple different conversations recently that warrant a part two, so I think we'll be able to arrange that, and we'll definitely make sure that happens.
Yeah.
I will include a link to John's channel. You can check out a lot of his bog collection. He does also post a lot of those YouTube shorts with a card of the day. So that's a really good way of kind of checking out some of the collection. It is vast. There is a lot of it, and you can check out a lot of the components of it. I do appreciate and enjoy that the content covers it, but then you've also got the vintage pickups. You've also got some of these different categories, and occasionally the thought piece, because I'm a big fan
Yes.
of the thought pieces. So that's
Yes.
always those
I
ones that I
I
enjoy.
dabble here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll include that information for you guys. As usual, there'll be more videos coming up on the channel, live streams at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Again, mercifully short. I thought about making them longer, but I thought, this is about what we can handle. So we'll probably stick to the usual formatting coming up here, and then we'll see whatever the content gods decree. Then I'm sure there's nothing controversial that we could possibly talk about on Friday.
No.
Nothing that has happened that anyone's going to discuss. Anyway, so I'll leave us all on that thought. Thank you all for checking it out. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll catch you in the next one.